There's a there's a production there's a production shop that's connected to my new work, and they rent like tables, chairs, cones, production
museum, and
there's a production shop.
We have David Volansky here to talk all about what's in his toolbox and why. Take it away, David.
all right, hey, thanks, Noel. Morning, everybody. As she said, David Volansky from the Pacific Pinball Museum. And if people saw the title of the presentation, they might have thought it was sort of cute, like what's in my arsenal of skills or whatever. No, I'm going to talk about tools and what's in this giant box you see me moving around. So we can maybe just like take, I now have a cart. The cart was not, I mean, the wheel, this was already on wheels. It was just, I kept having to close it to move it around and bend over every time I wanted a tool. So I love this new cart. Most of what I'm going to talk about is in the top part of this. Down below, we'll dig a few things out, but I've got also like bins of small parts and stuff. So it's not all tools. Most of what I'm going to grab is probably up here. So let's see. But I wanted to start with a little of sort of why is it worth even talking about tools? Everyone knows, like you see what's in your game and you're going to grab a tool to do it. But I'll talk a little bit about what I've learned in using different tools and why you want the right one. Then we'll talk about what's in my kit. I know I missed some things in the slide deck, and this is the first time going through this, so I know there'll be some stuff I pull out when this isn't anywhere in the deck. What did I miss? And then you know what a screwdriver is for. That's fine. But there are some unconventional ways that I use some of the tools that you'll hopefully go, oh, maybe I should carry that because it would be good for doing that thing. So first, when I think about why tools matter, what are you doing with your tools? If this is a hobby, for me, I do a little bit of work, but it's mostly a hobby. But for me, I want it to be fun. I want to have a good time. And if I'm having to sort of assemble the tool as I go, that's not fun for me. If I've gone to a few places where I can't bring my tools, and I know they have tools there, and I asked them for a hex driver. We'll talk about this when we get there. And they start sort of building this thing. I mean, I would have had the job done by the time it took them to put it all together. So for me, especially in the profession side, where you might be going by the hour or whatever, you want to be proficient, efficient, and also proficient. But in the hobby side, for me, it just became more enjoyable when I had the right tools. If you're trying to fix your own game and you have one game, you don't want to make a huge investment in a lot of tools. That's where you have all the time you need. You can kind of make it work with a multi-tool or stuff like that. But for me, hopefully you'll hear what I'm saying about why it's worth carrying all this. It's much more enjoyable for me to just grab the right tool, and it's so easy. Okay, a lot of you know me as a EM repair guy. I do focus on that, but I also repair solid state games. So some of what I'm carrying are exclusive to solid state. Some of them are much more efficient in a solid state world. And there's a lot of crossover, but I'll try to point that out when it's more for one or more for the other. But in general, electromechanical has more mechanisms. So there's going to be more disassembly and reassembly, and it's probably a lot of the same tools you would need for solid state. Whereas on a solid state game, you're working with boards and pins, and so I have tools for dealing with boards and pins that are different than anything I need in an electromechanical world. As we go through the deck here, I did not take pictures of my own tools because they weren't going to be as good as pictures I could find online. So I've integrated graphics into here so that they may present even better than what we can get on camera. But I didn't pick this brand, I didn't pick that particular tool. Don't take it as an endorsement. I will point out when I've kind of tried different things, when I like a brand. But yeah, don't read too much into the specific image that you see. I just give you a little bit of an agenda of the categories I'm going to go through here. I won't even list this out, but if you have a question, it might be something I'm going to get to later. Also, I'm fine with making this somewhat interactive. If you have questions while we're going along, or you have a comment, or you have a favorite tool in a category that I'm on, go ahead and share that. As long as we're done in time, it's all good. A note about sizes before we get started. Most of my tools are SAE, or like the American Standard measurements we're all familiar with. That, you know, on electromechanical games, that's always good until I get to a foreign game. And we'll talk about some of the metric sizes I do carry. I was warned, I haven't needed it too much when I'm working on newer games, but I did hear recently, like, some of the new games are coming with an assembly that has metric screws or like stuff like that. So I'll point out places where you really need it, and of course, if you guys have already run into this, point them out. Where is it that you've run into metric where you weren't expecting it? Also, I remember when I was starting, like, okay, what are the sizes I'm really going to need? And it turns out, you know, eventually you need all the sizes. Now, you know, crescent wrench can get you out of a lot, right? So you don't really need to carry every single one, but you will find you're going to need the one you don't have. Also, you know, it's a big kit. I learn a lot from the Pinball Pirate, Chris Coons. You guys have seen his kit. It's massive. You know, his idea is, and he does a lot of field work. So he gets to the game, he wants everything with him that he's going to need. He doesn't want to have to run back out to the car or leave a game. I mean, you can't walk away from your tools on location to go get something. So I try to have everything I need with me. And that may be a different criteria than whatever your work environment is. So that's part of carrying all the sizes I need. And about size-wise, we'll talk about what in particular I hold in particular. That was a weird way of putting it. Okay. First, before we even get into tools, lighting is so important. I watch people working in the dark, and you can't get the job done. Chris likes to say, you are smarter with the light on, because you can see what you're doing. So I always start with a light. And let's see, we'll go through some of these here. A clip light. Now, I carry one if I'm working on a project where I'm not going to be moving it constantly, then I use it. But as I've progressed through more, and particularly at a show like this where I'm probably going in and out of a game quickly, plugging this in is going to be a pain, I finally found a headlamp I really like. So this is an image, well, we'll put that on the screen. This is an image of the tool that I liked. So features of a headlamp, if you guys have tried using a headlamp, these are the annoyances I hope you're not dealing too much with. This one lets me turn it on and off with one button. I don't have to cycle through intensities or different colors or anything like that. I want on and off with one button. That said, this one lets me have 3 intensities, and it'll hold that intensity setting as I turn it on and off. It also has a super intensity I can turn on, and it stays on for 20 seconds or something like that. It then reverts back to whatever I was using, because it drains the battery pretty quick. The battery in this one This was another feature I really loved. Okay, let's make sure we get that. So it's a removable battery, it's rechargeable, the USB port is right on the battery, and I went and I got some extra batteries. Because otherwise you're always going to top it off. I don't have a meter, I don't know how full it is. So I keep extra batteries, I can charge it anywhere I am. This is like, I finally found, I think I found my forever headlamp. Maybe, we'll see. One more, let's talk about a few more things on this. Your cell phone flashlight is not a good work lamp. I mean, we've all done it, you pull it out because you're in the dark space, but by the time you're actually starting the repair, that's not the tool. And we all know that, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, now we'll get into drivers. And I don't have pictures of everything because everyone knows what a screwdriver looks like. It's not a big deal. But in my kit, I've got two sizes of slotted. And the key for slotted, because if you've got modern games, you might not even think you need these. So all the Gottlieb Electromechanical, all the screws are slotted. They're a pain to work with, but I'll carry two sizes of slotted. I've got two sizes. Oh, I'm sorry, I do have another size though. I also carry a tiny little one. This is really good for tightening the relay switch stacks on EM games. They're tiny little screws. The other drivers really don't fit. So I keep that, and it's handy and easy to reach. I've got Phillips drivers for just, I'm sorry, one more thing about slotted drivers. And I was reminded of this just like in the last week as I'm preparing the presentation. I'm working on a WPC game, so what is that, 90s? And everything is slotted in the game, except now we want to fix the lock bar. It was kind of loose and whatever. And the lock bar adjustment screws are slotted. So even in your WPC game, there you go, you just found a slotted screw. So you need to have those with you. Let's see. I also have, and here's where I did like pick sizes. A long shaft for a Phillips, I did the number 2 size. There are times I need long on the number 1, I deal with it somehow. And then I have one long slotted screwdriver as well. I'm not going to pull it out because it's just a screwdriver with a longer shaft. Okay, so the next one's the hex drivers. If you're not doing this very often, you can get out a socket and maybe you can build a hex driver, you can use it with a ratchet of some sort. But particularly in more modern games, like lots of assemblies are mounted under the playfield with 1/4 inch hex head screws. I pull this out, this was my magnetic. Long shaft, you're getting that assembly out, it's out. It just like that. When you don't have a tool this comfortable and handy, you're thinking, is it worth removing this? Is there another way I can fix this before? And you're going to spend a lot more time trying to fix it without removing the assembly when the right tool just makes it so easy. Now, in the hex driver world, so I won't pull them all out. Well, maybe I'll pull a lot of these out. So I have a set of, short hex drivers. These are all SAE. And these are not magnetic, but if you can, I don't know if you can get a shot down the shaft. These are hollow shaft. So there's a lot of times when the bolt is sticking up and the nut is on it really low. The magnetic ones, it doesn't have a shaft that you can get all the way through that bolt down to the driver. So I carry a full set, non-magnetic, hollow shaft. They're short, but it gets the job done. And then the only 2 long shaft magnetic ones that I carry all the time are 1/4 and 5/16. And that's most of what I need. So here's one where I did make a choice. to pick a size like that. And you know, I haven't had to do a whole lot of repairs here, but it was funny what I've had to grab as I thought about, okay, sizes and what do I need to carry. This tiny, what is this? 3/16 hex driver. I almost never use this one, but I needed to adjust a flipper, set screw on a flipper. This was the thing. And you know, you try to get in there with a wrench, you're probably gonna break the screw. Those break a lot. You might need it too tight where it's gonna break. This, I love that I had this. So, you know, that really comes in handy getting into a spot like that. Let's see. Now, for metric socket, metric hex head, you can get away with not carrying a set of metric socket, metric drivers, except for one side, because you can sort of cheat them. Like the SAE sizes will catch most of the nuts or bolt heads. And I wish I double checked this, but the 10 millimeter is the one that, is it right? Okay, so the 10 millimeter is the one that you kind of can't cheat. So if you're gonna pick one metric hex head driver to carry the 10 millimeter, and then you can cheat all the others with a full set of SAEs. All right, then let's see. I showed you my my long shaft magnetic. Here is a time I will say this is the brand I like for these Klein tools. I don't know. I don't know what Marco carries. So I don't know. Maybe I was thinking we could kind of work on a tool section and whatever. But I went to Home Depot, and when I was shopping for hex drivers, I kept going, and I wasn't finding what I wanted, and I wasn't finding what I wanted. And I would look, like every time I went, and like, how is this what they have? It turns out there's a whole other section in Home Depot for electricians' tools. And that's where I found the Klein the hex drivers are there, the magnetic hex drivers, really good sort of strippers, wire cutters. I mean, all that stuff was in this. And in my Home Depot, it's 2-story. I mean, it's like upstairs, way in the back corner. So make sure you're figuring out where it is you're really shopping and find the right stuff. Now, we talked about the long shaft, stubby drivers, and I mean, I can dig. So these are pretty deep in my toolbox. I almost never need to grab these, but it's almost worth pulling these out just to show you how tiny they are. So, deep, inconvenient, and it's I stored it with other tools I forgot to put on the list. So I do carry a set of taps and dies. Maybe we'll talk about that more in the end, but I'll show you what that is. With these little stubby drivers, that's it. That'll get in some spots. Now, people have sort of ratcheting tools with tips, and I have some of those in my kit. They're so varied, like I almost never pull them out. This will often do the trick, and I really like it. I've got a set of what I got 2 sizes of.
Oh, they're so cute.
I got my 4 sizes there. So and these, if you search for stubby driver, you'll find those. I was surprised I was able to find them online. And then let's see. Oh, this is not a tool, a brand I've ever heard of, but this is a picture showing that sort of ratcheting, low profile. If you are going to pick one of these up, when you're shopping, look for the lowest profile you can, because I think I ended up buying one where by the time I put the bit in, it's probably taller than my little stubby. And you can get some that are very short. I mean, that's the whole point. You're trying to get into a limited space. But the other thing I wanted to catch in this graphic for you, I think I have a mouse. Yeah. Does that? Yeah, it shows up a little bit. Torque bits and security bits. So these ones that are little stars, the torque bit of the stars It's a very size-specific thing. You can't sort of cheat these and use one that's close. But the security bits have the torque driver with a hole in it. They can also be used when you're just using a regular torque. So I carry like the security bits, and I can kind of get the job done. I mean, there's other heads in here that I don't think I carry or have ever used. All right. Okay. Next section, unless there are questions on drivers. Good. So, switch cleaning, and here this feels mostly like an EM thing to me. You know, a lot of solid-state games either have opto switches or they have micro switches, or they'll have gold flash contacts where you're using a business card or a dollar bill or something to just get something in there to get the dirt off. When I'm working on an electromechanical game and you're trying to clean a switch, you're going to use something with more grit. And I know people, so I use a file. I think I show a picture here. Okay. I know the picture's kind of fuzzy. There are different manufacturers of different files. I don't think this is even a specific pinball tool. It's like a points file. The one I like this one because it's wider than other ones. Sometimes again, I don't have my tools with me, and I ask someone for a tool, and they'll hand me a file, and it's half the width. It's hard enough to hold this in place. So I like the width. I like the feel of it. I've gotten used to it. I will break down at some point and show you. If I can't bring my tools with me, I bring this, and I have a file in there. And a file is one of the tools I consider it's a consumable. It eventually isn't very gritty, so I buy several at a time. I carry several at a time. It's really an easy tool to lose and forget somewhere, so you don't want to get stuck just because you've done that. A modification I do, I don't know how well you're going to be able to pick that up. If you see that the tip is pointed, as it comes, the tip would just be fat like that. On a grinder wheel, you can sharpen the tip, and then if you're trying to get in to clean a normally closed switch and it's closed, you can get in between it because you've got that little wedge at the end. So I recommend that for people. Except if everyone does that, I'll never figure out which is my file versus your file, but that's okay. Other ways that people clean switches, there's Flexstone, which is, it's flexible, and it's got grit on it. I tend to avoid Flexstone. I know people who use it all the time and they love it, but the grit can come off, and now you've left something there that might make the switch not work. So I don't like sandpaper, I don't like Flexstone because it's going to leave something behind. Files mostly don't do that. I mean, there's metal filings, but that's why I don't like it. Now, I still carry Flexstone. I don't know how I would find it in there because I almost never use it. There are times, particularly on some motor switches, where it's really hard to get an unflexible file in there. Don't try to bend your file. It will snap very quickly. That is not a forgiving metal. So Flexstone is good to carry for when you have a tight space and you're going to use the flex of it to get there. But otherwise, I tend to avoid that. I know people who love using a Dremel with a bit on the end for cleaning switches. I just don't have enough need to carry a Dremel. I have a battery Dremel. I can use it for a few things, but with the limited space I have, it's pretty full. I just don't want to add more power tools that I don't need and would hardly use. Let's see. I know some people who they don't want to file on their switches. They just want to use alcohol and a swab. Especially in your electromechanical game, the switches are fine. Just you can file them. Some of them I file harder or softer. You know, the heavier contacts that are used in places where there's more arcing, so it's a high current situation, you can file on those pretty hard. When you see that they're worn from all the arcing. They're not worn from all the filing. So I'll file pretty hard on those. Now, a really cool tool I want to show you. And the picture will, so this, I think this is the right brand. Or a brand that I would stand by. Yeah, this is a different, I actually have a different German brand of this, German company. So this works kind of like a mechanical pencil. These bristles are gonna, they come out. This does not feel like anything on your hand. I mean, you can't even tell. But if I were to scratch on some metal, it's amazing what this tool can clean. So I've had times when you've got a switch contact, you have filed it, and you can see it's still just not getting there. And now, to get this, you often need to take the switch stack apart. But you get in there with this, you only have a little bit of it pointing out, and it works amazingly. And these are not expensive.
Are they fiberglass fiber?
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you very much. It's a fiberglass, or they have different ones. I found it by searching for nylon brush tool or scratch tool. But yeah, this, I don't pull it out often, but when I pull it out, it always amazes me that you can clean a switch like, oh my God. Yeah.
The best one they don't make anymore is the old Wicco fiber brush. A little plastic, it's yellow and clear, and it has just the perfect fiberglass. I wait on eBay, and when they pop up, I just click them.
Is it kind of like this though?
It's like that, but it's a little smaller. If you've never seen it, I'll go get my toolbox and show it to you.
Okay. The mics aren't picking that up, right? I should repeat it?
Yeah, you can repeat.
So a comment from the audience was that Wicco used to make a version of this that I guess was shorter, and you look for them on eBay when they come up. They're yellow, but I thought about trying to order a bunch of these and just hand them out to everybody here. They're about $3 each. So on Amazon they were like it was a 3-pack for $10 or $9 or something. So I'd say if you can catch me with my tools open, I'll scratch some metal for you. Well, if we find the right thing here, maybe we'll do it before we're done.
What's the brand, this one?
Well, this one, it almost doesn't matter.
Better question, where'd you get it?
What's that?
Where'd you get it?
This one was given to me by the Pinball Pirate.
Okay.
So, but I bought others that weren't even like a name brand. It's kind of a consumable and it's cheap. So get one, see if it works. That's.
This is what he said in class.
Yeah. So there's a.
Exactly.
If you search on Amazon, you'll find it. Yeah. Okay. Switch cleaning. I think that covers switch cleaning. Then switch adjustment. I really like the one I got comfortable with. And that's the reason I say that. I mean, I'm not going to talk a lot about switch adjustment. People know what they are, I think. But someone will hand me one, and it looks just like this. Only this one, let's see, if I hold it like an L, right? The slot is here. Someone hands me one, and I hold it like that, and the slot is here, and I can't use the tool. I've gotten so used to it, like, I'll hold it, and I'm going to adjust. And if I end up like this, I can't use it. So this is one of the things in my little kit that I carry. You get used to the switch adjuster. These are also consumable. You've used it long enough, it's going to break open. I have ones that are more worn, so they're wider, and ones that are newer, closed. Yeah, a lot of times on the electromechanical, you've got a switch with a backing blade, and you kind of need to use them together, group them together. So you need some that have gotten older and they've worn it open. So I carry a bunch of these. Mostly I just carry a bunch of this exact one. But in the auxiliary box. So here's another manufacturer, and this one's got a different angle. Every now and then, the switch adjuster I have, I need that, twist, the 45-degree bend, so I can reach something. And like I said, I've got ones that are more worn and less worn. So I carry a little bit of a variety of those, just so I've always got something that'll reach where I'm trying to get to. I'm sorry. Oh, I talked about consumable. Good. Okay, moving on to soldering. Let me put some things away as I go, though. Won't even have enough room. One thing I like about a box this big and sort of organized is I can find things really quickly. So I put things back. I know exactly where everything is. I've got to put some things down below, and then it's a little harder to get to, but I can usually find them pretty quick. Yeah.
You'll share with us what the toolbox is and the cart and all that as well?
The toolbox, yeah, I can tell you what that is before we're done. Yeah. Let's see, where are we at? Soldering. So, things to consider are, wired or like a wired power cord, something battery operated, or butane. I'm going to tell you now, I was burning through butane irons. I was buying them from Weller. Like every year I had to call them with a problem and they would just send me another one. But it was like every year. I went through about 3 or 4 of them and I said, we talked about different butanes. I bought the best one I could find. I've given up on butane because I found a battery one that I really like. It has some drawbacks. But I'll show this off. So it's small. Now it comes with a nice, really flexible cable, which helps when you're soldering and you don't want to have like the cord itself restricting you. And it comes with a regular wall plug adapter. But you take a power brick like you would use. I'm sorry, a power brick. That's not power bank. Power bank. Thank you. You get a power bank like you would use on your phone. This one does need one that's with a higher voltage, but in fact, I don't even need to hook this all up. Well, the reason to hook it up is one thing I like in this situation is it's got a display, and once I've turned it on, it's going to tell me when it's up to heat. I hate waiting for the solder iron to heat up, and when you don't know what the temperature is, it feels like you're waiting forever. So at least this way, this is going to go to 300, but I don't need a hot iron here. So that's got a display. The downside of this one is not battery life. Battery life has never been a problem for me. It's a 5-watt iron. So it works great for soldering a wire onto a coil, doing some board work, soldering a wire onto a switch tab. But if you need to do like a socket repair, where you're going to solder the barrel to the bracket, people know that little socket repair hack, that is not going to generate enough heat for that much metal. So it can't be the only thing I carry. So in addition to that one, again, not wanting to have a whole solder station with me, I carry this, I guess we call it a solder tank. It's kind of a heavy wire, but it also has a display. And I can adjust the temperature, I can see when it's up to heat, and so I like this. This was not terribly expensive. You can look online for, in fact, I think I got an image. I was able to find something quickly. I don't know what the quality is of these different ones, but I really like having the display here so that I can adjust the temperature and also see when it's up to heat. All right.
What's the brand of the first one, David? The battery?
You know what? They're pretty much unbranded. What is this thing called?
Technically Miniware, but they're called like TS80.
Oh, this one is Miniware. Yeah, okay. But it's a TS80?
TS80 or TS100.
The TS80 replaced the 100, which is weird. So you'll be thrown off. But, so thank you for remembering all that. So it seems strange, but yeah, buy the TS80. That's the newer, better one than the TS100.
What's the brand name again?
Well, Miniware is on here.
Miniware?
Miniware, but you may find a lot of sort of, I don't even want to call them knockoffs. I think it's like a reference design, and everyone can just make their own.
Amazon?
TS80.
I
TS80.
don't know if I did eBay or Amazon, but yeah, okay. The first one I had did develop a problem with the USB port. I looked at ways of fixing it, and I just figured it was easier to just buy a new one.
You ever try using like the Milwaukee battery operated one?
Okay, the question about a Milwaukee battery one, I have not, so I don't know what that one's like. No, I do know what you're talking about, yeah.
M12 battery.
I wish I had an image of that. So I have used these stations now. So like a power tool battery,
Yep.
like a battery pack for power tools. So you get the Milwaukee power pack, and then sliding onto that is a sort of solder station. And this will be, high wattage, high heat. The battery pack lasts a pretty long time. It really is a station. There's a place to put your solder pen. I've had a friend sort of adapt his to have a place to put solder, a magnet to hold his wire strippers and everything. So, yeah, is it just Milwaukee that does it? DeWalt has one
Yeah,
too?
it's a knockoff. The wall itself doesn't make it works with the wall. It's
Okay.
yellow, but it's not really big.
Yeah, so and those are good. It would be a trade-off for me whether I want to carry that much more, because the battery packs are heavy. So, but definitely that's good to have on site, and you're still not dealing with a bunch of extra looking for power somewhere. Let's see, continuing on soldering. So, I mean, I bothered to put in a picture of solder. I don't know why. It's just solder. I couldn't even tell you whether it's good to have lead or not, or which mix, 60/40 or 63. I just use what I've got. I don't go too deep into it. There are different gauges, and I'm using a medium most of the time. I do keep a thinner gauge for me for some board work, but you can use the smaller one all the time. For the solder sponge, this is like one of the big things that I'll still carry because I just love this. But trying to have an actual sponge with a portable solder station, it's just a pain. Plus, you have to keep the sponge wet. It's supposed to use distilled water. That's all pain. This sort of metal sponge, metal sponge. This thing just works. And this part is replaceable. You'll throw this out at some point and replace it. So you feel like you can do solder work without that, but you're not doing your iron. You're doing your iron a disservice. The right way to finish solder work is to tin the tip, clean it in the sponge, and then turn it off. And then it's ready to go for the next time. So it's one of my pet peeves when I've got like a shared solder station, because no one does that. I'll pass that on here. Let's see. Flux, for doing board work in particular, you need flux. In a kit like this, I settle for just having a pen. A lot of people like to have sort of flux paste and a toothbrush, but it just gets messy. So a flux pen, well, that's a mess. It kind of works like a marker pen, and the flux will come out kind of like a marker pen. It's good to use flux cleaner when you're done. It's a big spray bottle, so it's not something I carry. I just try to be really sparing with the flux when I don't have access to flux cleaner. It's not a requirement, but it sure makes the work look a lot nicer when you're done, when you can clean it at the end with some flux cleaner. Every now and then, I might use flux, even like on an electromechanical where I'm trying to get the old solder out. Usually I just add more solder because it's got flux in it. But every now and then I'll reach for that. For desoldering, The picture here of solder wick is good to, as a reference. I have not become proficient in using it. I've now started watching people who are like, you put it on where you want and you heat on top of it, and I think they're getting good results with that. I tend to use a solder sucker. And now, here is a brand I like. I think that, yeah, mine's the same brand. I couldn't find an image of the one I have, which is smaller to fit in a toolbox. If you haven't used one, you sort of spring load it that way. You've got, you melt the solder, get this close, you hit the button, and it does a little vacuum thing. So, that's it. Yeah. The tip pops off, you can clean the old solder out of there. I think of solder suckers mostly for board work, where you need to kind of clean things up. But the other day, I'm working on electromechanical. I have to reconnect a socket where like the ground braid is where I had to replace the socket, and I had to get the solder off the ground braid. I've got the play field up in the service position, and there's this glob. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just use the solder sucker. So there I am on electromechanical using my solder sucker to get the glob of solder away, and the new socket went in beautifully. I didn't end up with a whole big mess somewhere. So I carry one of those even for electromechanical work. Let's see, flush cutters. It looks like a pair of pliers. It is not a pair of pliers. They're not just wire cutters either. The whole idea of the flush cutter is the cutting edge is right at the edge. So you can come right up on top of something and cut, and there's nothing else left there. So particularly like for board work, you know, you've soldered the component in, and you want to snip it right above the solder work. This is kind of the only thing that gets you into like right where you want to be. Another place I use flush cutters, this is a good thing to learn, when you're using zip ties. When you pull it tight and you've got the tail sticking out, you cut it off right at the edge. If you cut it off higher, you've created a really sharp edge that you're going to cut yourself on. So you get right up on the edge and you cut it, and you'll see like you're not going to cut yourself. So flush cutters are good for that. I use it for cutting dowels when I'm filling a hole on a playfield, bottom or top. Clean out the hole. I put some wood glue on a dowel. I put the dowel in the hole, and I cut the edge. Now, for cutting my dowels, I have my old flush cutters that are all getting kind of, it's almost time to rotate. So these are all the crappy ones. So in particular, like some of the other things I mentioned, flush cutters are consumable. Buy them cheap, buy them in quantity. When I was looking for pictures to give you, like here, you could buy 5. This is one kit. You could buy 12 or 20, whatever, 10? Yeah, so, you know, in fact, I'm probably carrying, not counting the old one, I'm probably carrying a second brand new one. When you've cut enough, this edge is just trashed, and you get to something where you want it to be better. Wire strippers are one of those things where there's a lot of different varieties. So some of them look like this. They've got sizes for different wire gauges. This one also has ways you can cut bolts. There are versions where it'll sort of hold the wire for you and pull away what you're trying to strip. I don't like any of that. I carry this. I actually found a picture that looks almost like exactly what I carry. You can, if you're going to do a lot of stripping of the same gauge, you can loosen this screw and adjust it so that it closes at a certain point. But I'm almost always just going by feel. I get in there and I strip, and it's so fast. I'm not trying to figure out what gauge it is. I like this. Yeah.
Does that work on thicker wire?
You know, if it's going to fit in that where the cutting, you can see the little box that's going to close.
Right.
It's got to fit in there. But trying to think of what gauge. I mean, it's going to do 16 just fine. I think 14's fine. I think if you're getting bigger than that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So for pinball, it's
Oh, for pinball, I've never needed something else. I mean, at that point, I might just pull a blade out and start cutting away.
What do you call that if I wanted to search for it?
This one?
Yeah.
I was online, I did wire stripper, and I had to search through a bunch of images to find something that looked like this. There were a lot of them that looked like these other ones. But you can see, I mean, this is just even smaller. And I'm telling you, it's...
I noticed that's what I was intriguing, how small it is.
Yeah, it's totally effective, but, and like I said, if I was doing a lot of stripping of the same size, I would probably move the adjustment. But for me, I mostly go by feel.
You've gotten
and you know, every now and then I pull some strands out and I'll start again.
Right.
But
overall, you've gotten so used to it to where you just kind of...
You feel it.
Feel
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Multimeters. So I'm not hardly using my paper slides, but it keeps me track. Okay. There are digital and there are analog multimeters. I carry a digital one. I've gotten used to using it. I like it. It's pretty small. It's one of the things I do have to go under to get just because of its size. I think the image on my slide is pretty similar to the one I actually have. So a fluke meter, I'm not going to do, you could do a whole seminar on using your multimeter, but I carry digital. If you see Pinball Pirate out on the floor, he will pull out one of these. It looks vintage. It's not. Simpson still makes these meters. They look just like this. I know he's told me why he uses the analog, and maybe someone here can tell me if I got it right or not. He's often trying to, you know, he's trying to catch the pulse. Something, you know, the voltage isn't always there. It's like maybe there's a strobing circuit or something, and on a digital meter, you'll miss the pulse. It doesn't catch that little bit. Where on an analog meter, you know, he just wants to see, is that needle moving? So I know he prefers this analog meter. They're both fine. That meter is pretty big. The image you see there, it's yeah, it's pretty big.
Is that the same one that they made for like?
I'm sure they've changed it and refined it, or probably made it. It's probably cheaper to make. What's that? The question was, do they still, is it this, asked if it was the same as the old ones.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they've done some improvements.
It looks the same.
But yeah, but this is, I mean, this is a new meter for sale.
Huh.
Yeah, they definitely still make these. A point to make about multimeters, quality matters. There are a lot of cheap meters out there. You can get them for free when you're buying other tools at Harbor Freight. And a lot of those are probably fine. But think of when you're using that multimeter. You're using it to test something that you think is faulty. If you're questioning whether your meter is also faulty, you're never testing the thing that you're trying to fix. You want this is one of those places where like you shouldn't be compromising. You need the meter to not be part of the question about what the problem is. Okay, point it out there because I've run into it. I talk about different probes. You know, I'm almost always just using these. It is a little bit of a problem because they're kind of big. I mean, there are probes that are smaller. Sometimes you want probes that are clip-on. I kind of just get by. I'm doing okay with these, but don't shy away from shopping around and looking at the different probes because you might need something that's smaller. And in fact, like when I need it, So I have this, it's an alligator clip on one end, and really a tiny probe here. And is it sharp enough? I don't know if I've ever tried it. Particularly on like cloth wire, you can go through the insulation on the wire and get in there if you need to check something. If you have sort of a pointed, more of a probe with a tip like that. Was there a question?
Yeah, she answered it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, David.
And let's see, a word about continuity tests. And I don't know, I probably still fall prey to this sometimes. And let's think of this more in EM world where that might be how you're diagnosing something. When you set your meter to continuity, it's going to tell you, is this connected to that? And it's got some threshold of resistance where it'll make the tone go off. When you look at the wiring diagram for your electromechanical game, the thing you're testing, there may be another path why that looks closed. Your switch isn't actually closed, it's somewhere else. So you might want to, you can even just turn your meter to resistance instead of continuity. You're not going to get the beep, but if you're trying to see, is this switch closed, and you're trying to use a meter to test it, you want the resistance to be near zero, or you're probably testing something else. And a lot of times you'll test it, and it'll say 30 ohms. Oh, it's going through the coil over there. The switch isn't closed. So, a note about continuity tests. All right, how are we doing time-wise? Oh, we might finish. Okay, wrenches. I carry a set of box wrenches just because I have found they actually do, much like having the right hex driver or having the right size, it's just a great way of reaching the thing you need to get to and doing it. It was a long time ago. Did anyone know why it goes off to an angle like that?
So if you're in a tight spot, you can switch it over.
Yeah, exactly. So if in a tight spot, you might be doing like a tiny bit of work to move it, and then you flip it over, and you can do a tiny bit more, and so you're flipping it over each time to get to it. So a set of box wrenches works. Mine kind of gets spread out in the open holes of my toolkit. So pulling them all out wouldn't be helpful, but I probably have the hole size from 1/4 inch up somewhere in my kit. Then, let's see, box wrenches, top size. So sockets and ratchets, I'm not a huge fan for most pinball work. I'm always going to use like a hex driver or a box wrench. Again, if space is a constraint, you could carry a set of sockets and a handle, but I'm not a huge fan. Now, a crescent wrench is very handy when you're not sure what size you have, but it's sort of the worst wrench, I think, for just moving a nut or whatever you need to do. But that's not why I carry a crescent wrench. I use it for bending metal. Put that in here. So you want to adjust the lock cam on your coin door. This is my tool. I can get it to just the right size, put the cam in there, and I can bend it. It's a good amount of leverage. I'm often sort of fixing bent bits of coin door on an OBM. I use this. So I use it as that much more than as a wrench. But even just in the weeks that led up to this, as I started working on the slide deck, I was working on a game and I looked, there's a square nut, like an old square nut. The other wrenches really I can't use a socket driver for sure, or a hex driver. So this does work when I get to like something metric, some weird size. I mean, it's worth carrying the small one in my kit. So I use it for all kinds of stuff. I do like a crescent wrench. Allen wrenches, you're definitely, you're going to need Allen wrenches if you have mostly, actually some older games, the set screws are also Allen wrenches. The last thing I want someone to hand me when I ask for an Allen wrench is something that looks like a pocket knife and you're pulling them all out, you never get sort of the right angle you need. In a pinch, sure, it's the thing you have. But God, I hate that. That is just the worst thing to hand me. So you can get a set of angled wrenches. Now, my set of angled wrenches is buried because that's almost never what I use. Okay, good. So you can get a set like this. That works great, but that's still not my favorite way of dealing with Allen wrench screws. Now, I don't carry all the sizes of a T-handle Allen wrench, but this one, long, it's 5/32. This is the one that a lot of the coil stops are mounted with, the little number 10 black Allen head. When you need to get that coil stop off because you want to look at the coil stop, replace the coil, whatever, this thing just, it's a snap. It's just like no effort. You can just get in there, you're pulling it out.
What size is it?
5/32. And so even looking online now, I mean, that's a slightly different design, but you could buy just the one size. I think I got this secondhand, and I just lucked out. I found like the perfect secondhand tool. There's two other sizes that I keep them around because I have them. They often fit like the set screw I need to get to. 9/64, though and this one doesn't have a label. I usually pull out both because I'm not sure, I can't tell. They're so close to the same size, but over time, you'll develop, carrying a full set of T-handle wrenches is big. You pick out a few of those, you carry this, and you're covered. Except metric. And I think it was an Allen head metric screw that was in a new American game, but some component was built with that. So somewhere in here, I do have a set of metric Allen wrenches. In fact, I think I have two because I forgot I had one and I ran to the store and I bought another set. They're cheap, but I couldn't find it, and so yeah, this is a place where you definitely do need to get yourself a metric set as well. In the wrench world, let's see, pin wrench. People are probably familiar with these. I think you can buy them from Rob Anthony in the EM room. So it's got the two sizes that you need for assembling a game. The 5/8 for the leg bolts, 9/16 for the head bolts. It's ratcheting, it's pivoting. This is great. You could just, and you'll put it in your pocket, you'll get through the whole setup, tear down, all of that stuff. I like it. Anything with a ratchet, I always kind of figure that's going to fail at some point. So if you're doing a lot of this, you probably just buy the extra or make sure you know how to get another one quick. I added to my kit recently. So when you're setting up games, now you got to go under the game and you're going to level it. And you know what? I'll talk about this when I get to leveling. Sorry. But I do have another wrench to show you. And then I have beware of gimmicks here. I didn't bring them all because they're hidden in my garage somewhere because none of them work. There was a time that Crescent tried to make sort of a ratcheting crescent wrench. It doesn't work. I found a sort of a ratcheting handle that was a squeeze grip, would turn the ratchet. I thought, oh, how cool am I going to be putting legs on with this? You can't get any leverage. It doesn't work. So I keep seeing these things and I buy them, and I haven't found one I really liked yet. So beware of gimmicks. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on something until you know it's going to work as a gimmicky wrench. I know I've run into that. Okay, pliers. Oh, we're out of time.
Keep going.
Yeah, I'm going to keep going. Let's see, how much more have I got? I'm going to speed it up, but Let's keep going. Okay, and maybe I'll go faster because needle nose pliers, people know what that is. There's not a lot to talk about. I will say, here's another place where quality can matter. Because needle nose pliers, there's not much going on there. If it's going to twist when you're trying to work with it, it's not really a tool. It's not helping you. So think about that. Angled needle nose, I avoided this for the longest time until I found the one that I believe this was described to me by Steve Young at Pinball Resource. I haven't verified with him that this is the thing. Because he was describing angled needle nose that he uses for switch adjustment. And I think I found it. So I don't know if you're able to pick that up. I won't even give you the number because I don't know that you'll be able to find them. They were very, it was hard to find. We were getting the wrong things sent out. So angled needle noses, I never had these in my kit until a few weeks ago. I've already used it 2 or 3 times. Like you see, I'm like, oh, this is the place where I'll use that angled needle nose. So good to have. Let's see. Vice grips. I have a small one, and then buried in there I have another small one that's more of the needle nose. I'm going to assume people are somewhat familiar with vice grips. The thing about it, I think I had a note here. Okay. Coil stop screws are always breaking off, and before you get to using an easy out or something else, if there is a little bit of it still getting out there, I can usually grip it with a vice grip and get that broken screw out. I think I use my needle nose ones, but that's a problem. And if you've ever replaced a Gottlieb coil stop, just like the single coil stop that gets replaced in the bracket, you need to be able to hold that coil stop while you're putting the nut on. That's what I use the vice grips for. So they're worth carrying for me. I know where I'm going to use them. The other thing I want to say about vice grips is vice grip is a brand. And there might be someone else making a good set of vice grips. I don't know about it. Quality matters. These, you're putting something on really tight, and I have the ones that aren't good, they will definitely twist on you when you're trying to tighten something or grip something. Yeah.
Always get vice grip brand.
Okay, yeah. Another endorsement of vice grip brand. Yeah.
The full-size one works great to avoid drilling out locks on games too. Just see if you can clip it on the lock ring on a coin door or back box door, snap that thing on there, turn it 90 degrees, the door opens right up. Takes seconds. And the shaft of the lock is softer than the coin door or the back. It doesn't damage either.
I'm trying, okay, so to capture this for the camera,
outside, little ring in the...
He's describing a method for using a large size vice grip to avoid picking a lock. But I don't understand what do you grab?
You just grab the sleeve. If it's got a large sleeve, the outside.
Oh, you want to go inside?
You don't go inside. You snap it on the sleeve, parallel to the coin door.
On the sleeve. Okay.
And you turn it 90 degrees. It opens. I've done it hundreds of times. It doesn't damage the coin door. It doesn't damage the back lock door. Pitch it in the trash. You open the thing in 1 second.
You're talking the cheap locks, right?
Any lock, really hardened ones. Yeah, the ones the operator uses and stuff is not going to work. But 90% of the locks.
I'm not going to try to repeat it all because I'm still not sure what I'm describing to grip, but we'll cover that. All right.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, easy. I'll show it to you.
All right. I have a tool I almost never use, but I'll always carry it. And the reason I bought it is because someone showed it to me, and it's gorgeous. So another German brand, Nipix. They do make a variety of different, this looks like a channel lock. They don't call it a channel lock. But, you've got a way you're making it bigger and smaller. I have used it in the last few weeks. But, it is, people when I pointed out Nipix, people in the audience had said, oh yeah, Nipix is great. So, check out their stuff. People I've showed this to, they'll go buy this, and then they have a little tiny one. And it almost looks like a toy, but it's a tool, and we're going to work really well. I recently saw that they have, I haven't had a great pinball application, so I haven't bothered, but they have some parallel pliers. And if people don't know, there's a lot of sort of pivots and things that make so the wrench, when the teeth open, it's just like that. It's a parallel wrench. And there are certain applications where that's what you need, and it's great. I'm going to try to remember, what did I use this for? Like I had to use my dissect to fix a screw this week. And I was reminded my crescent wrench isn't big enough. I don't really carry all the full kit. And I finally figured out what the cutouts in this were for. Look how perfect a fit that is in the little cutouts in this wrench. So, all right, Knipex, you won't be disappointed. Let's see. We talked about parallel. Flush cutters. I talked about flush cutters earlier. If you're really careful, and it depends on like the delicate work you're doing, I have used these like pliers, but it's you can't do a tight grip or you're going to cut something. But you can get in there with those. Okay. Leveling. Everyone's leveled, and actually I've seen a lot of pry bar use here, which is great because years ago we weren't doing that, and the word got out. So, you know what, I'm not going to, for time's sake, I'll just show the picture here. I do carry a digital level. The reason I like digital is, one, if I'm having to level something by myself and the area is quiet, I can get an audio cue of when it's level, so I can be under the game doing the back and hear it. But I also like that it can measure slope, so I can get the pitch of the game right. I will at times just use my phone. It'll talk to me about level and pitch and stuff. Yeah?
These digital levels, you gotta calibrate them, you gotta zero it?
I don't remember having to ever do that with mine.
The one I had you did, like where do you zero it at?
Yeah, well it has a bubble on it, right? I mean,
so you get the bubble or
I don't remember having to calibrate mine. Also, it's probably close enough for pinball. I mean, you're not trying to get perfect. Right. It's,
And a warning about phones, like when I went over to a friend's house for a tournament, he would use his phone to level all his games by putting it on the play field, and he forgot about, the camera lenses, how it tilts your...
Yeah, so a comment about using your phone, leveling app on your phone is think about the lenses, and I've thought about my case as well. And my lenses are flat. But I do have there's this protector around the lenses. And I thought, well, how am I really getting the right thing? And then I realized at the bottom of my case, it has that equivalent thing. My case actually does sit flat. But it's definitely something to think about if you're going to try and use your phone. Is make sure that it's sitting flat on the play field or glass or whatever.
About?
What's that?
The level, can I see it?
The phone or the...
No, the level.
The digital level.
The digital one.
It's one of the bigger things in my kit.
Does it have audio?
It does have audio, pretty quiet though. You'd have to be here before everybody else to use the audio.
How expensive is that?
Oh, I bought it 15 years ago. I don't know.
$40 on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Is it up to 20?
40.
40? Okay. All right. Now, the pry bar. And I didn't get a chance. Does everyone know where you're using? Well, I shouldn't ask the question because we might have an audience. Let's see. The video audience can't tell us. See, it's all within reach. Can you follow me over to a leg over there? It isn't always obvious what you're going to do. Well, can you get me from there?
Just check your...
Or did you get unplugged? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go.
We're good? All right. Rather than trying to hold the thing on your back, you're just doing that. It's great. You'll often need to have a leather block with you for a taller leg, but that'll save your back. Especially if you're doing one game, no problem. You're setting up a show, the pry bar really saves you. I'm going to need 15 minutes just to put everything back. Okay, now we get to one more wrench. Okay. When you're down there under the game and you realize the jam nut is already tight or you want to tighten it, you want to have that wrench with you. And though the levelers are all the same gauge, there are actually two different nut outside diameters that you can run into. I found a wrench that has both. So it's 9/16 and 5/8, just like your pin wrench, but open, and you need to have that. Now, here's where a gimmick kind of didn't work for me. I thought, oh, this would be cool. This is a ratcheting open box wrench. It's got a little notch here that ratchets. Well, the problem is you got to get it in the right way. So you're under the game and you have both sizes, so you're already covered that, but it's not a great ratchet, and you can't have it in backwards. So the gimmick didn't work, but it's not bad enough that I've gone and tried to find another alternative. So I did like that I could find open box wrench with the two sizes needed for leveling games. Okay, specialty tools. This is a tool that the Gottlieb company made. There's a newer version from Titan Pinball that has two sizes. So this is essentially a 1/4 inch box wrench on both sides. The Titan, I think, has a 5/16 on one side. This is meant for getting under the plastic to hold the post. There's a hex head on the post below the nut that's holding the plastic in. So this goes in under the plastic, holds it, and now you can remove the nut on top without taking that whole post out, which is what happens oftentimes unless you have one. I have not had needle nose that are this thin that'll get in there. So I like to have this tool, and like I used to have it harder to get to, and I realized, no, this has to be right at the top. I wasn't digging down for it when I needed it enough. Coil sleeve tool. This was not something I found easily online. Someone on eBay was selling something they'd made. I had a friend of mine make it. He had a metal lathe and some 1/2 inch stack. I don't know what size that is. In any case, and I should have brought a coil with me. I have some sleeve. Here's I have a sleeve here. A nasty little sleeve. So the value of this tool is when you've got a good coil that the sleeve won't just slide out, you can come in on this end, and the way this has been cut, you can catch the edge of this coil sleeve. This part of it will fit in your coil. So you can hammer out the old coil sleeve with this tool. The version shown in the slide doesn't have a whole long shaft here, it's just short. But that should work fine as long as you can catch the edge here and hammer it through. Over time, you end up having to grind the edge because it starts to mushroom and you want it to be able to go all the way through the coil. And on this side, I'll almost always use a punch. You can see I've kind of worn it out by using a punch to get it out. Because sometimes it gets stuck in the coil. But that tool, when you don't have it and you need it, the job is impossible. You can't get the coil sleeve out.
Who sells that? Because I know Chris Coons made one.
Yeah, so I mean, I learned about this from Pinball Pirate as well. I had a friend of mine make it. There's a guy on eBay selling something. I think I searched coil sleeve tool.
I'll see it.
And you don't see it?
Nope, not on eBay.
I didn't search, I think I did a Google search, and I found something.
Soon to be on Marco.
Oh, yeah? Soon to be on Marco. We can say that, soon to be on
You're gonna
Marco.
sell
All right.
those, yeah.
Marco has the post-net thing that.
Yeah, they have the Titan one, I think.
It's branded by them, and it's
Oh,
called
okay.
like Post Buddy.
Post Buddy?
It was in the goodie box last year if you brought a game too.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Marco does have a version of that Gottlieb Palnut tool. So that's the comment being said here. Okay, my next specialty tool I don't have a picture of. Now, if all you have to do is deal with is one lock, fine. Just deal with one coin door lock. If you're going to do a whole bunch of them, I like this. All it is, it's the deep socket, but it's a 7/8 deep socket. It's a quality deep socket. I think this is like a snap-on. I bought, but this is a thumb ratchet. So you can switch it for on or off. And that I can just throw in the bottom of my toolkit, and I'm not thinking about this big long handle. The big long handle is probably a different size than all the other sockets I might ever need. So this is the only time I'm going to need the what's it, quarter. So I keep that around as for doing locks. Circuit breaker. So this is a picture I could find online. You take a blown fuse and you attach it to a circuit breaker. And now when you're fixing a game and you've got a blown fuse, you throw this, and you need a circuit breaker of the right current setting. Oh, can you put it up on the screen? So mine, I put mine together a little differently. I didn't solder directly on there. Sometimes I need a little more space. So I've got wires attached to a blown fuse, and they go on to, I carry, mostly for electromechanical, I carry 5, 10, and 15 amp circuit breakers. And recently, I added to my kit a little adapter. So I got a blown small size fuse, and I just attached it to a large size clip. So I can do that and use it in like a solid state game that has the smaller size. It also, in a pinch, if I have the right fuse current, but not the right size, I'll just leave this in the game for a few days, go back later and put the right fuse in. But I made my little adapter for that. Okay. Spring hook. Do I have a picture? No. Okay. This was a tool I made myself. You can use like a dental pick or stuff like that, but when I needed this tool, I got a piece of baling wire. Let me just put it down and let you try to get a good angle on that. So, like someone else, I was working with someone and they needed one, I made it out of a paper clip. So if you're doing Gottlieb drop targets, you really need the spring tool. There's a place in the target where you have to go through here to catch the spring and bring it back. You cannot get those springs on by hand. You think you can use needle nose pliers, you can't get enough. That's it. It's just this tiny little hook on the end. There are also spring tools more for like pushing springs. They're different. I've carried a bunch of dental tools. This is the thing that I end up pulling out. It's almost the only thing I end up really using for spring. So it's not something to go buy. Just realize that's all. You need to have this when you need it. Okay, I think we're getting close to the end here. Punches, spread throughout here. I have a couple of different punches. Roll pin punches in particular have a special shape. And roll pins, you're going to use this for like changing the linkage on a flipper plunger. Then there's the linkage and then the crank. And if you want to not like replace the whole thing, you'll need to remove the roll pin. The thing to note about it, I don't know what the best background is going to be for you. On a roll pin punch, you've got this little tip that points out that sits in the roll pin.
Oh,
So it
wow.
keeps itself centered. You got a good picture? All right. So it keeps itself centered. A tool that I don't have is a roll pin starter. It actually, it looks like a punch, but it's hollow. And it'll go, the roll pin will go in it, and it'll hold the roll pin. So ideally, you use the roll pin punch and you don't take the roll pin all the way out, and then you can kind of sneak it back in. If you do knock it all the way out, it's very hard to kind of hold it in place and have the punch there and use a hammer of some sort. So the roll pin starter is similar to this, but has a hollow shaft that will hold the roll pin for you. Let's see, pin crimper. Now we're getting into some solid state stuff.
Where did you get that roll pin punch?
Pinball Resource has roll pin punches. Now, I went online, pin crimper. Where's my, I thought I had pictures of a pin crimper. When I looked online, I couldn't quite find this one. There's a lot of ratcheting ones out there. This was one that Pinball Pirate gave me. So it's got some extra leverage. You can see some extra pivots there. If you're going to do one pin ever, you can probably get by with the wrong tool and try and do it. But if you're going to end up replacing a bunch of pins on a game, you really want to have something that's going to crimp them properly. So you want to invest in a tool that you're willing to keep around. If you're not carrying it, I mean, this one's smaller for carrying and stuff like that. Oh, we got to wrap this up. Pin release tools, I'm not even going to pull mine out. You try to use a little screwdriver or something, you're gonna end up destroying what's in there. Pin release tools, they're simple. I'll pull out one example. So there's like a handle, there's a thing, and there's a spring to it. And this is, I think, for the male pin. So you put the male pin into there and you push, and it just comes out. It's like magic. You've tried to do it without the right tool, and you fight with it forever. With the tool, they just come right out. So I would say, for whatever game you're working on, get yourself the right pin release tools. For some of the Trifurcon, it'll look just, it's a tiny little thing. But when you don't have this, you can't get that tool out. Get a good picture. All right. More on my list here. Board release tool, I think it's also in here. Very technical here. You know the boards that are mounted with the little post that sticks through it. It's got the little barbs that stick out, and you try to get your needle nose on that, and you're never really getting it right. So the correct tool is a tiny little tube. They'll sell you this as a board release tool. You put this over that thing, it just pops right out.
What's the diameter?
I don't know.
Playfield post will work as well.
What's that?
A playfield post will work as well.
A playfield post?
Post.
Oh, a playfield post has the right hole size?
Yeah.
And there you go. Awesome.
All right, I use a big pen.
A big pen? Yeah, okay, a big pen. But I'll tell you, I carry this, I pull it out, it just works. It's wonderful to have the right piece there. Let's see, socket cleaning stick. It's slightly flexible. It's got a little grit to it. You put it in the light socket, you turn it, you're cleaned your light socket. I've bought fancy things for doing this, but I ended up with a piece of tube that someone gave me. It's the perfect size to hold your lamp and get it in. So, like, especially on an EM back box, where they're often recessed in there, you can't get your fingers in there. You just grab it. That's a great tool. Gotta have that. Magnification. Somewhere in my kit, I have a 10x, a 30x, and a 40x. I think at this, sometimes I'm checking board work. Sometimes I'm trying to read the label on a fuse. So I carry stuff like that. Alligator clip, let's see, riveting tools. I don't carry them. Let's not get into it. I have box cutters. I have a small hammer down there. Alligator clip leads, I can't get a job done without alligator clip leads. I've got them In my small kit that I carry, I have them easily accessible, different, and always have a lot of them because you might just link them together to get a longer one. And here's one where quality matters because you're trying to troubleshoot and clip around stuff, and some of these, they're not connected from end to end. So make sure when you bought them, you've tested all of your alligator clip leads and fixed them. You can pull back the insulation, you might want to solder them in if they're just crimped in. It is a place where I've run into problems. A screw starter, there's a couple of different ways people can get these. This one has flathead on one side, it'll kind of grab my screw, Phillips on the other. Some people like magnet ones. There's some other little mechanical ways to do it. Let's see. Magnet bolt kind of pulls everything together holds all your parts while you're working on the game. I almost forgot to say telescoping magnet tool, and then when I grabbed it yesterday, I added it to the list. Everyone knows what this is. But that's also, like, it's in the little mini kit. It's easily grabbable in my kit. I always keep it really handy. Supplies. Wait, I didn't want to skip this. So these 3M Scotch-Brite pads, I end up cutting these in a third. I buy a whole box of them like this. I cut them in a third. This is, I clean metal with it. I clean wiper rivets with it. We had a plunger that was kind of dragging in a sleeve the other day. I cleaned it with this. I cleaned it had a metal sleeve it was actually going through. I cleaned that, it worked fine. So I swear by this stuff. I love it. I use it all the time. Alcohol spray bottle. You know, sometimes other chemicals are better for cleaning. Naphtha, if you live in California, or lighter fluid. I use lacquer thinner sometimes. I don't carry any of that because it's all too flammable. It needs special. You can get this bottle I got at Walgreens. I put alcohol in it, and I'm always using this to clean mechanisms. Like if I'm taking a whole stepper apart, I'll clean everything with alcohol, and then I'll end up and with the scrubby pad, and then I've got greases that I'll put on things. So. I don't have the label anymore. The PBR grease from Pinball Resource. I'll use that on wipers. This was not the jar that this came in. This is a jam jar. This is just black automotive CV grease. And this goes anywhere else I'm going to use grease. Very sparingly. I'm usually using grease not to lubricate something that's not moving well. I'm using grease to prevent wear, where metal is rubbing on metal, and I use it on metal and plastic, and a lot of people don't like that. They think it leaches into the plastic and plastic swells. I haven't really had a problem, so. But I use very little. I've got rags and towels, electrical tape, some glues. It's probably not worth getting into all of that when we're so low on time. Here's a picture. Yeah, this grease comes in just like a bag, and that's what I ordered. CV grease, just cheap, whatever you can get. I do carry Loctite, shrink tube. I've got it in there somewhere. Man, more. You know what? I'm going to just wrap it up. I think we're out of time. There's another group coming. Let's get. Yeah.
Did you have special tools or special technique for cleaning Jones plugs?
So a question about cleaning Jones plugs. That is where I use this. Thank you. And I did want to say, I use this on the male, and when I was new at this hobby, we had this whole discussion about cleaning the female one. We never really found the right thing. People have found the right brushes. I've never had to clean the female side of a Jones plug to make it work.
Do you just reseed them to clean the female?
Well, yeah, I mean the female, look, the truth is, the female side of the Jones plug, what's touching is a tiny little edge of something. So you're probably cleaning that enough when you just put the pins in and out.
That's what I mean.
I know some people who will just plug them in a bunch of times to clean them. I do like using this to kind of clean the male pins, but I've never really had to clean the female side. So, here's a tool I took out because I don't think I put it in the deck. Little corners, when you're taking the glass out, you're going to put them on the floor, particularly on a concrete floor. Little corners are easy to have in your kit, and take advantage of those. Yeah, I'm not going to go through the small parts because I think I'm done. A little picture of something like my kit. Specialized is the brand. Oh, no. You can put that picture up. But the brand is Specialized. I ended up getting this secondhand, but if you looked online, you could find something. They're not the only ones who make a kit like this, so I'm not saying. What's that?
Chicago Case.
Chicago Case has a kit like this. And really, where my tools are in here, because they usually sell them with all the tools, but they don't have a pinball kit, so I don't know. I just found places where things kind of work for me and made it fit. I would open it to questions, but I think we need to wrap it up. So, that's it. Oh, I also carry like a Sharpie pen. Keep it in your kit. This I use to repair score reel numbers that have gotten rubbed or whatever. So it turns into a tool. All right.
All right, let's go ahead and start rolling, y'all. Okie dokie. All right, so I'd like to welcome back to the stage Mark Gibson with Fun with Pinball and David Volansky with the Pacific Pinball Museum, here to tell us all about the intro to electromechanical startup sequences. Take it away, y'all.
Thanks. We haven't figured out who's going to say what yet, so I guess we'll...
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Let's talk about objectives. The impetus for this talk is there seems to be a lot of people out there who will ask a question online and say, my game won't start, the motor just keeps running. What's wrong? And they think that there's sort of this answer we can give. And in the next hour, we'll tell you some of all the different things that could be wrong. And so kind of going through what happens in the startup sequence, what all the different variations are, and look at some of the troubleshooting steps for getting through that.
So it's a maybe an oversized topic to try to cover, and so we are not going to address a specific game. We're trying to hit common features that you'll run into, rather than working through the complete sequence of any one game. So these are the kinds of things you're going to want to evaluate as you're troubleshooting a reset.
So we're going to focus on electromechanical games with score reels. We will talk a little bit about earlier games that have what's called light box scoring, but mostly we'll deal with the score reel era. We will look at and talk about different manufacturers in different eras, but again, we have examples, but the idea is to stay general, and because every game is different. You might have two games adjacent at the same time by a factory where there's some more commonality, but really, I pull a schematic out every time, just about, because things are different. No one reason, there can be a lot of different things that are causing the problem. We'll cover a lot of different ones. And of course, it's a really complicated process. There may be more than one thing that's broken. I mean, if your game was working yesterday and now it isn't, it's probably one thing. But if you're working on a project and it still won't start, it might not be just the one thing you're looking for. You may find something and it still doesn't work. You're going to look for more and look for more.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to talk about this cruel irony of learning EM repair. A lot of people, they'll get a project game, and before they've done a lot of work to it, they're going to plug it in and hook it up, and it won't start. And to get it to start, you only have to learn just about everything there is to learn about EM repair to get it to that point. So if you just want to get started, it's often better to get a working game, have one thing fail, work on that one thing. Hopefully the thing that failed isn't startup. But really, you're going to cover almost everything in the game that isn't on the playfield, and sometimes things that are on the playfield. But it's involving relays, motors, steppers, score reels. All this stuff has to be working correctly for startup to complete.
It's typically, or often, among the most complicated sequences your game has to accomplish, right? Particularly if you're looking at a multiplayer game, you hit that start button and it takes much longer than any event that happens as you're playing that game, with possible exception maybe counting a bonus or something like that. But it's a tremendously long sequence in relation to the other things that your game has to accomplish. Commonly required startup events. So we're going to cover a lot of these individually, but this is sort of a shopping list of the kinds of things that you're going to see that are going to have to happen successfully as the game resets. Starting with a replay button, which will typically fire either a relay or your score motor. They're starting credit and start relays, lock and hold relays are the kinds of things that will be the first things to fire in your game. Everybody's familiar with the score reels that have to reset back to 0. That's always seems to be a common troublesome point, probably because there's so many score reels, right? You might have 1 or 2 steppers that have to reset, but you might have 3 or 4 score reels that have to reset. Wood rail errors that uses light bulb scoring. They have steppers inside that need to reset as well. Ball counts, coin units that keep track of how many players have paid. Those all need to reset. Why don't you finish that?
Yeah,
off?
we'll probably talk about we will talk about all of these again. This is kind of a high level overview. Let's see, you were. We'll get into each one of them, and this last point about feedback is something we're going to dive into a little deeper. When you fire off the startup sequence, there are a bunch of things that are going to get reset. Score reels are going to get reset. The bonus units are going to get reset. Coin unit. A lot of those have a switch or something that the game is going to use as feedback to know it accomplished its reset. And a lot of them don't have feedback. So when the motor just keeps running, it's usually not gotten the feedback. Now something may not have reset, or it may have reset and not closed a switch that sends the feedback. That's 2 different problems. But a lot of times you'll have, you have a multiplayer game and it keeps starting in 2-player. That may be a reset of the player unit that doesn't give feedback. It sends a reset pulse and doesn't wait. So we're going to talk, as we're talking through, about things that do and don't have feedback and how they come up as different kinds of problems. And this is sort of like an agenda slide for where we're going to go with the presentation. We're going to talk about how you start the sequence. It fires off some relays. Those relays tend to get the motor running. And with those relays engaged and the motor running, other actions will now take place, including resetting stepper units, resetting score reels, and resetting other things that need to get to that sort of 0 state for us to start. And we'll have time permitting, we'll have a nice deep dive into the Gottlieb player unit, which is the Gottlieb multiplayer sort of system manager even. I've never thought of it that way, but it keeps track of a lot of stuff that's going on, and Mark did this amazing sort of breakdown of what's in there, so I'm hoping we'll get to that. Anything else in this?
No, okay. This is just a tour. So we'll often get a question online or in the clinic, I've got this new game, I hit the start button and nothing happens. I have credit, so it must start. And sure, it should, but it's not, just the switch behind the door that's not working. There are things that have to react to that, and maybe we'll go to the next. We'll have examples on the next slide here, but typically, your start relay or your reset relay will have to respond to that coin, or your coin relay will have to respond to that replay button that you've hit, or the coin that you've dropped. And one of those will start the score motor running, which will get the ball rolling through your reset process.
I'm going to take a little break here before we go to the next slide. You mentioned the clinic. Let me do a little commercial break here. Mark organized something that we started during COVID, but have continued them. We've gone ahead and continued them about every 3 or 4 weeks, and they're not pre-announced. Like, we figure out if it's going to work for people's schedule. And you can sign up for these on the Fun with Pinball website. Is it funwithpinball.com? Okay. People sign up who have a game at home with a problem, and technicians sign up using we use the term coaches in that setting. And we also have a lot of spectators, people just wanting to learn in those sessions. So they're not recorded, it's live. It's a platform similar to Zoom. It's called Jitsi. It's free, everyone will have access to it. And we talk people through solving their problems. We're often on these sessions for like 3 or 4 hours. They tend to be Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific time, but we have people from all over the world joining. We have a regular from Germany who's on at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and we answer his questions.
And one of our coaches is from down under in Australia, so we've got several continents dialed in at the same time, which is really cool.
So we'll talk some more about how to find it on the funwithpinball.com site, but for now, let's just continue on.
So these are all examples of where you might start. Okay, so my start button or my credit button doesn't work. Well, notice that if the objective here is to fire one of these coils, for example, the first one here, if I wanted to fire this coin relay to get the ball rolling, right? Well, my credit button has to work, but so do all the switches behind it, right? There's 4, 5, 6 switches typically in a circuit that have to all close at the same time or be closed for that credit button switch to do anything. And the credits are going, the circuits are going to vary from game to game and manufacturer to manufacturer, but just be aware that there are many things between that button and getting the game going, right? So you may have cleaned that switch, you may have replaced that switch, you may have studied it, and the switch may be perfectly fine. It may be somebody else in that circuit, right? But they're all going to be somewhat similar, right? There's going to be a number of things that all have to be closed to get you going, to get you started, even if you have credits, right? The credit unit is just another switch in this chain.
And one thing to notice about these examples, and we didn't even include a Gottlieb, which we'll talk about. In all of these examples, the coil that's getting fired off as a result of all the switches being closed and hitting the credit button, it's not even the same one on all these games. There isn't a term for what that coil is. It might be coin, it might be credit. What's another? We have 2 different ones called credit from different manufacturers.
Start, replay.
But yeah, it could be start, could be reset, coin, credit. And in a lot of cases I've seen where the coin relay then fires the credit relay. There's sort of this cascade that gets the game in the state it is in for completing reset. A bunch of relays trip. And one of those, or multiple of those, will probably start the motor, which we'll get to soon. Wanted to talk a little bit about the Gottlieb sequence, because I think Bally and Williams will usually just fire off some relays that stay locked on. I don't know that they do as much of using interlock relays or trip bank. They probably do. Again, I don't keep track of all the different games and eras. I just work on the game in front of me, and I know there's not going to be one solution. There's commonality. The thing that I wanted to do about trip bank, and we're talking about the SB armature, but Gottlieb has an interesting sequence on some older games where when you start reset, a relay on the trip bank will trip. And trip bank relays, they get energized for a very short time, and then they change state, and they stay in that state until the whole bank gets reset. Gottlieb has this sequence where they trip something on there, and it may trip more things to get through reset. And at the end of reset, the trip bank gets reset. So it's kind of interesting. They start reset by tripping something, do a bunch of work, and when it's all done, they can reset that. And that's something you want to kind of understand, because people often ask, what is the state of the schematic and all that? You want to kind of understand that, but you also want to realize, and maybe look while your game is working, when you hit the start button, there's something on the trip bank that's going to trip, a bunch of stuff is going to happen, and then it's going to get put back into its reset position.
Something else to be aware of is shown on this schematic. This circuitry is running at 120 volts, right? This is the power plug in the bottom right corner, and it's feeding right into the transformer. And some of the circuitry is in the 120 volt domain, right? We didn't show it in the previous slide, but often that coin switch behind the door is also running at 120 volts. So be careful, particularly working on a game that you're not familiar with, that there's going to be live mains voltage running around through there, not just safely tucked in the back where the transformer is. It can be peppered throughout your game. But this SB armature switch that's circled here, this whole bank can be reset with a single pulse from the score motor, but it's dependent on a switch called the SB armature switch, which confuses a lot of people, and it's hard to adjust. And if you've never seen one, this is where it lives. This is the underside of a trip relay bank.
This was something that was actually out of a game, and usually you can flip these up, and you still you'll never get this good a view of that switch while it's in your game, unless you were like this tall and kind of climbed under everything.
So the switch is mounted to the bottom half of this trip relay bank, and it's hard to see, and the issue is that it has to work properly in a setting where you can't see it. So the whole rack does rotate up so you can see it and adjust it, but once you flip it back down again, you can't really see if it's operating properly. And it's running at 120. You'll notice the plastic coated wire. That's kind of a clue that it's running at 120. But this thing needs, typically on a Gottlieb game with a reset bank like this, needs to be working properly, and is the cause of a lot of issue, because people can't adjust it and then put it back and readjust and put it back, and can't get it dialed in properly.
And to make sure you're seeing where this is, and if you could point, because if I turn away from the microphone, it doesn't pick me up. So behind this bracket is the coil. And the coil, when it energizes, it pulls in this armature, and the piece above it falls down and changes all the switches. And all your trip relays work that way. The SB armature switch is a special switch that's leaning up against that first piece that trips. It's separate from all the other switches. And when I've asked Gottlieb engineers why this was developed this way, they say it has to do with the timing, and that this switch needs to change state later than all the others. They wanted to make sure the switch opened only after you're completely reset. So it's tucked under. I have had this be the cause of startup problems. So there are times you just have to get down to it. And God, just even looking at closed versus open, it is hard to see. These blades are bent kind of funny. I would clean all that up if I might not even look there if things were working.
Right. Don't adjust it if you don't have to, right?
and again, 120 volts are running, 110 volts are running here. I will unplug a game to work on that. I don't just depend on the on-off button.
And you'll often see a rubber stopper beneath this switch that's resting up against the armature.
Where are we?
That is often, if that's missing, right, you may have 120 on your entire trip bank as well.
Oh yeah.
So be careful with that.
Good point.
Have we beat that enough?
Yeah. So another style of relay that you're often going to be looking at as part of a startup sequence is an interlock relay. So an interlock relay has 2 coils. So instead, most relays will have just 1 coil. It energizes, changes state of the switches for a while, and when it de-energizes, the switch states turn back to their resting position. With an interlock relay, you fire 1 coil to change the switches into one state. You fire a different coil to change it back. Neither coil needs to get energized for any length of time. It just gets a little pulse. And they're not used just for startup, but the state of those switches can sort of carry over when you turn the machine off and turn it back on. It's going to stay in whatever state it was in unless something else in the game is going to switch it right when you turn it on. This example is showing how the startup sequence uses a game over trip latch relay, but a common one that causes problems in startup, I told you how Gottlieb did this sort of trip bank. It trips it, and then when it's done, it resets it. They wanted to get away from using trip banks in general, and they have, people often have heard about the AX relay, and people think of it as the dreaded AX relay. Particularly later EM models, the throw of the switches is very small. You've got to get things adjusted just right. There's not a lot, it's not moving as much as other relays. And that relay is going to change state at the beginning of startup and then change back at the end. And it's going to use 2 different coils, and it's getting energized 2 different ways. And this is a reasonable example of seeing something like that.
Yeah, so I mean the dead giveaways, there's a big switch here in the latching circuit on the reset relay, right? So this is something that does have to happen during reset. And the lower part of this schematic is what happens during the game when this thing would trip. But it's the top path that's used during the reset sequence. Okay? So score motors eventually are going to get involved in reset in most games. The score motor is going to drive a lot of the sequences. It's going to throw pulses out at your score reels, for example. And it often will keep running until it has gotten it, or the reset circuitry has gotten the feedback that we talked about, right? So parts of the reset circuitry are going to wait to hear back from score reels and other things. And we'll keep that score motor running until they've heard back from all the devices that it needs to hear from. The side benefit of having that resiliency is that if you have a sticky score reel, sometimes the motor will get you through the reset. It might take a few extra tries to get it back to 0. But the fact that it's waiting to hear back keeps it, so it makes the game a bit more resilient as it's waiting for service, right? And often, the complaint is my score motor won't stop running. Well, typically your score motor is the victim in that situation, right? He's just the guy trying to do his job. He's not heard back that he can stop yet, right? So the score motor running is more of a symptom that something is wrong rather than the cause of the problem.
Yeah. One thing I always like to include in discussions when I talk about the score motor is when you're looking at the score motor, and the diagram here is
a bally.
That's a bally. And Gottlieb's got a horizontal. Essentially, you've got a bunch of cams that are going to change the state of a bunch of switches as the score motor is turning. Every switch but one there is dependent on some other switch in the game to do something. In other words, if nothing else in the game has been energized or put into a special state, you can sort of turn the motor by hand, and you have to just sort of start it going. One switch on the motor will make it always stop in the same home position. And there's more than one home position. We'll get into that differently. But there's one switch there that by itself will run the motor back to its home position. All the other switches only do something if something else in your game is in a state where it's going to use the score motor to get some work done. So, during startup, let's see. If the motor's running and nothing is happening, it's because another switch is not closed. You're probably not looking on the score motor. No, you could have a score motor switch that isn't closing and isn't kind of getting the work done either. But usually it's running because something else hasn't finished. That's kind of the point of that. Mm-hmm. So now we get into the resetting of stepper units. So at this point in your game, you've hit the start button, some relays have tripped, the motor has started running, and other things are going to get reset. That's kind of set the stage. So looking at stepper units, a good example is the ball count unit. You need to get to where the game is going to start. In a lot of cases, it's just like a regular replay game. You're going to set the ball count unit back to 0 or back to 1, depending on the manufacturer. It's a single pulse sent to a coil. It'll go ahead and reset that unit. And I think in most cases, it's got feedback. It's one of those things that the game is going to stay in reset until that is actually accomplished. And there's a post with a switch on the back of the unit, it's probably not on the wiper, that tells it it's done. If you want to talk about add-a-ball.
Well, we'll have an example of add-a-ball.
Okay, so we'll show that, but in add-a-ball games, the stepper operates differently. It's going, during startup, it's going to not like suddenly reset. It can't do that. It's going to step down to 0, and probably at the very end of reset, I think it then steps up to either 3 or 5, depending on how you've set your ball, how you've set your game. So for add-a-ball games, you've got this step down, step up stepper for counting balls, because you can start at 5, you go down to 3, and then you've earned another ball. It'll go back up to 4. It could go back up above 5. So you've got this stepper that goes up and down, whereas on the other games, it's just going to start at 0 and it's going to count up to 3 and then end your game, or count up to 5 and then end your game. So there's a big difference between those two and how they work in reset.
So this is just a trivial example of a ball count unit. It's a simple stepper. This particular one resets completely back to 0 from any position when it gets a reset pulse from the score motor. In the circuit here, you'll notice it's driven by a score motor switch that's in the red box, and it's dependent on a switch on the coin relay, which is one of those relays that fires as soon as you hit the replay button at the start to get the ball rolling, to get reset started. The other stepper in this schematic is not shown. I mean, it's shown in the schematic. There's not a diagram of it. The replay unit is something else that will have to take a step down. It doesn't step all the way back to 0. It doesn't take all of your credits away. It just takes a single step backwards as part of reset.
And one of these is actually going to step up, the total play meter.
And the play meter goes in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't step down ever, but it's just, it gets a pulse and it adds to the meter there. Mm-hmm. But recognize, and it's a little bit uncommon that switches are going to drive multiple pulses out of a branch. There's usually discrete, but here's one of those cases where these two switches are going to make those 3 things happen. Good to notice, if one of them isn't happening, don't have to go look at those switches. Those switches are working if 2 of those are working and 1 isn't. You might have a mechanical problem. You have a broken wire, bad coil. I always take advantage of when there is a branch to say, if these 2 are working, I'm looking at the 2, let's say 2 of the, if my play meter's moving and I'm decrementing credits and I'm not resetting the ball count unit, it's not the switches. Start looking at wires, look at the mechanics of your ball count unit, stuff like that.
The game has all kinds of built-in troubleshooting features like that, right? Leverage these things as troubleshooting or diagnostic tools, right? Because they're wired together. But this is the example we mentioned of add-a-ball units. So there are 2 coils here shown. One is advancing the ball count up and the other one is stepping it down. Well, as part of the reset, this thing has to step down all the way to 0 from anywhere, right? You might have unplugged the game or tilted the game and it will count down to 0, before the make break switch flips to the other side and counts the balls up to 5 as part of reset.
So looking at another kind of stepper that needs to be reset as part of startup sequence is your bonus unit. These are typically mounted on the bottom of the playfield. And in most cases, they're going to do a step down function. So there's a lot of pulses getting sent out. So if your bonus was high and your game ended because usually your game ends and you count off your bonus and it's going to be at 0, but if you've tilted or turned off the game, your motor's going to run a few cycles just to get the bonus unit all the way down to 0 if it has a lot of bonus built up. It was only at the very end of the EM era that, I think I know of one game, that added an extra coil so that your reset, you can reset your bonus unit with one quick pulse. Grand Prix does that. I'm not sure that I know of other games that did that. It's an unusual sort of a convertible stepper. You can make it step down or you can make it a full reset with an additional coil being energized. But in most cases, lots of pulses are going to be set to the bonus unit to get it down. And this is one of the units that'll have feedback almost always. There is a switch that the reset sequence is waiting for that shows the bonus unit got to 0. I don't think we have that in the
That's actually in the schematic here. So if you look,
okay, good.
The top half of this drawing is the circuit for the bonus relay. And there's a switch here on the reset relay. So this path is being used during resetting the game. And it will fire that bonus relay and keep it fired until the bonus unit reaches 0, right? That's the feedback. It's waiting for that thing to count down to 0. It doesn't know where it is, but it knows when it gets to 0. And with this bonus relay active, I can now, we'll close this switch down here, and these score motor switches are going to send pulses through to step that bonus count down. And it will take as many pulses as it needs and wait until this 0 position switch opens, and that's when this part of the reset will be done. Was there a question?
Yeah, there's a question. Let's get a microphone to you if we can. Otherwise, we'll either repeat your question or we'll give a.
If you can ask, I'm sorry.
Sure. Oh no, I entertain questions throughout. If I think you're.
I just wanted to actually make a comment. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late and I didn't even see the instructions. But I was going to tell you there's an absolute example of what you're talking about right over there in the other room called Skylab. It has this. Like if you want to just go see after you're done talking, anyone here? Go look at Skylab. It's got the 5-ball system that you're discussing. It's in 100% working order. It's beautiful. But I think it's got the reset ball thing. That was all I wanted to say. You guys doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
It's like there's probably a lot of examples of everything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say every permutation that we're going to go through is represented on the EMs in the hall, but probably a lot of them. Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. If we could just take the time to open every game there and kind of talk you through it.
Go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So another stepper that gets reset, we'll call we're going to reset the count of players. So a lot of games will call this a coin unit, not the coin relay, a coin unit. So it's a stepper that it makes 3 steps. It resets to 1, and if you've added a second player, it steps up once. It add another player, it'll step up. So very short steps. I've worked on Gottlieb games that use a single pulse to reset it, and I've worked on ones that use 3 pulses to get it all the way back down. So it's again, not one answer, even in the same manufacturer. The games are very close together in years, but they had just changed the way they do that. Other games may use relays to keep track of how many players have coined in. This is kind of what we're talking about. So that's one of the things that needs to be reset. I think in general, these don't have feedback. And that's a lot of times why your game will reset, but you're in a multiplayer game without having pressed the replay button multiple times or coining up multiple times. And there are other things that can cause that problem as well. So it's not just that these didn't give feedback, but that's one thing to be aware of, is if you're completing reset but you're still in a two-player game, it could be that reset sent the reset pulse to this stepper unit, and maybe it went from the 4th-player position to the 2nd player, or the 2-player position, but not all the way back to 0 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on that one?
No.
Okay.
So the score reels are often getting all back to 0 is certainly part of reset, but it's something that seems to confuse people. The score reels all have 2 switches that indicate when they've gotten to 0. And the way they work is that during reset, the score motor is sending pulses in chains of 5. You may have heard on reset, dot, 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 right? That's a cadence that, from all the score motors where they're sending out 5 pulses to the score reels, and they're resetting in groups of 5. Each score reel will take as many of those steps as it needs to get back to 0. And one of these 2 switches, called on this slide, it's called the runout switch, opens when each score reel gets to 0. Its runout switch opens, and that blocks any further pulses from getting in and advancing it past 0. So that's one of the 0 position switches. There's another 0 position switch that does the feedback that we're talking about, and that lets the reset circuit know that this score reel has done everything it needs to do. We're done with reset here, and we'll wait patiently for the rest of the game. So often you'll read, people having problems. Well, my score reels all get to 0 so that I know that they're fine. Well, that's just half the battle. I still have to phone home and let the reset circuit know, right? So I need both of these switches to be working properly. I think that's everything.
Yeah, the problems when either switch is not working as intended appear differently. If you watch a score reel reset and get to 0 and keep going a little further, it's the runout switch that didn't open. And your game may reset sometimes and may complete reset sometimes and not other times, because if it happens to be at a 0 at the end of one of the da-da-da-da-da, the other switch could be saying, oh, I've got 0 showing. When in fact, you would have to have ended a game with that reel in the 5 position or something. I'd have to think maybe 6. So you've got a problem. If the runout switch isn't opening, you may run past 0. And if you see that, you're looking for that runout switch. But if you're looking at everything as showing 0 and it's still running and you've looked at everything else, you may have you may have a game with 16 score reels, 4-player game, or more than 16 score reels. And if they're all showing 0, but one of them hasn't closed the switch that provides feedback saying I'm at 0, and sometimes that switch opens to give feedback, by the way. If just one of them is not doing it, your game keeps trying to complete reset. And it's just this one switch on one reel. And they're all showing 0. You just have to go look at that.
So these are score motor charts that you might see on your schematic drawings. And they're showing you when and how many pulses each of these switch stacks is throwing out. On the left is a Bally score motor chart, and on the right is a Gottlieb score motor chart. And the Bally chart is actually replicated twice. They would always put two sequences back to back. But you can see in the red boxes, these are the chains of 5 that they use to send out pulses during reset. Because in the worst case, all of your score reels are at 1, and it takes 9 pulses to get them back to 0. So that means that there's usually at least 1 pulse that's not used, right? You never use all 10 pulses, because if you're at 0, you're going to stay there. But this is, you will usually find these on this schematic. They didn't always include the score motor chart, but this would help you identify on what cam that switch is or where you would find it on the score motor.
And on some multiplayer games where there's a lot of score reels to reset, and you'll see this if you're playing the games in the hall. They each kind of do this differently, and they take a different amount of time. Gottlieb multiplayer games are not very fast at getting everything to 0, and we'll talk through what that process is like. But they're gonna set a bunch of reels to 0, set a bunch more reels to 0, set the last ones, and then they move on. There are some, I think it's going to be Williams games, if that's a Bally, Williams games. They've taken those 5 pulses and they have another 5 pulses that are sort of offset. The Gottlieb chart shows the capability, and I'm not sure if Gottlieb ever used it that way. But when you do a reset on one of the games that's doing that, the score reels just go, and they're just gone. They all are done. But they can't actually send one pulse to all 16 reels at the same time, or you would end up drawing too much current firing 16 reels all at once. So they'll do, I think they can do 8 at a time. So they'll do 8 and then 8 and 8 and 8, and it just goes so fast, it looks like they're all going at the same time. But it's incredible that it just, like, it's done.
So to see these on your schematic, these are the runoff switches from 3 different games. They have slightly different names. You kind of have to learn to recognize them, but these are the circuits that are driving the solenoid in the score reel or the disc unit. And it's always followed by, this is the switch that's on the score reel, and it's always right next to some switch that has something to do with the reset circuit, right? So in this case, the D relay here is a reset relay. There's a reset relay down here in this Bally drawing, and another reset relay in this Williams drawing. So the pulses are coming through that lower path and having to get through that run out switch to get to advance the score reel. And when I get to 0, that's the switch that opens and prevents any more pulses from getting through.
And a nice thing to notice about these 3 examples is you've got one line. If you're familiar with reading schematics, it's hard to kind of point to everything. There's one line that's the normal scoring circuit for getting, 10 points or whatever it is that we're looking at. And the line next to it that runs in parallel going to that same coil is the one that does reset. So they're not happening at the same time. One of them is while you're in a game, and one of them is happening during reset. But they're driving that same coil, and it just depends on where are you in reset or doing something else.
So these are all examples of the runout switch that's blocking these pulses, but there's also examples here of the switches that have to then phone home and provide the feedback to the reset circuitry. So this top drawing here is a Williams drawing, I believe. Yeah. There are 16 switches here representing the score reels in a 4-player game that all have to open up before I'm allowing my reset relay to relax. So once reset has started, it's going to stay active until all 16 of these things have come through and opened up. So as David mentioned earlier, if any one of those fails to open, will never come out of reset, even though maybe all of my score reels have stopped advancing. I still need all 16 of these to open up too. And on the bottom is a Gottlieb example. Notice that their switches are normally closed, and the Williams ones are normally open. They're just different conventions and different circuit styles, and whether or not your switches are in parallel or series. So you need to really look at the schematic to figure out which way your switch has to behave on your particular game.
And in this case, I can tell you, the state of the schematic is the score reels are at 0. Mm-hmm. So again, in this example, Williams, when the score reels are at 0, the switch that's giving feedback is open. On Gottlieb, the switch that's giving feedback is closed. And they're both correct. It's just they do it differently. I have one anecdote to go with the Williams schematic, though it wasn't a Williams game, it was a foreign game I was working on. I lost hours because I didn't notice that where we see the 16 in parentheses here, representing there are 16 score reels that have to hit 0, it actually said 17 or something like that. I hadn't looked at that number. And that game was managing a feature of the game with a score reel that was mounted under the playfield. you couldn't see, there was nothing on the reel. It was just they wanted a 10-point stepper, and they buried it under the, and they documented it as a 17th score reel. And that's where my problem was. I had looked at all 16 score reels till I was blue in the, I could not figure out why I couldn't finish reset. That number said 17, and I had to find the last one.
So this is going to, an animation of what a reset sequence might look like. It's a simplified drawing. It just has 2 score reels. This is the score motor chart that we referred to earlier. And down here at the bottom are the coils that drive 2 score reels. And off to the side on the right are the images of the score reels. Right now it's at 37. The game ended with 37 on the last 2 digits. I've got a reset relay here in the middle. And when I put this in motion, what's going to happen is that the reset relay will fire because I've fired the start button. And that will make my motor run through this reset relay switch. And we'll see the pulses coming out from the motor and trying to drive both of these score reels. The 7 is going to get to 0 much sooner than the 3 will, and the 3 will require that this thing go through a second sequence. So right now you can see we've advanced 1 digit. We're about to advance another digit here. And when the circuit turns green, that's when it's conducting electricity. So this is the 3rd digit, and now my 7 has gotten all the way to 0, so that score reel is done. But I've still got this reset relay active because I know that I haven't gotten that 2nd digit. So I've gotten up to 8 now, and I have to, that's the first 5 pulses that have come out of my motor, so I'm going to repeat that process and try to get those last 2 pulses out. So we're going to step from 8 to 9 here, and then finally from 9 to 0, and that's going to allow my reset relay here to relax. And now the motor is just going to run by itself with nobody asking for it until it gets back to its home position.
Is this animation on your website?
Probably something similar.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have similar animated drawings.
It's really great to see it sort of slowed down. I guess if you're watching the recording of this, you could actually like stop it and kind of look even more closely between each step. But I'd love that you do these animated circuits where you can see how the pulses of the motor are energizing different parts of the circuit. It's hopefully a really good learning tool for people.
So moving on from that, back box lighting is the 4 score reels. All the scoring was done with lights, and it's typically done with 2 big steppers in the back box. Commonly 10,000 point stepper and 100,000 point stepper. And we'll try to step through what that looks like a little bit here. But there's an unusual situation where the stepper actually steps to what's called a -1 position, which is more sort of a reset position, and eventually steps back to 0. And we'll step through that here in a moment. Is there anything else?
I was going to describe the step through before you do it.
Okay.
Because I thought when I learned this, I thought this is so elegant. I love how they did this. So the way these games work is the 10,000 stepper, and that's the low score, right? The 10,000 stepper is a continuous stepper, and it really just counts from 0 to 9, and then when it goes from 9 to 0, it just keeps going around and around. When it goes from 9 to 0, it sends a pulse to the 100,000 stepper to step up. The 100,000 stepper is that's actually a bigger stepper. It has a lot of steps. It'll count up into the millions. So when you get to 900,000, it just does another step to get to 1,000,000. The next step is 1,010,000. Next step is 1,000,002. So it's a big stepper, and it resets with just like a snap. So when it snaps back to that -1 position, it has closed a switch that will run the motor and advance the 10K stepper until it gets to 0. When it goes from 9 to 0, this one, the 100,000 stepper advances from its -1 position to 0, and the 10K stepper is at 0, and now your score is reset. So the next few slides sort of walk through what's happening in the schematic that shows you that happening. I think if you,
sure. So the first step here is it's
so small here, yeah.
It's small in both places, yeah. So the 100,000 unit steps has its own reset coil. It rewinds all the way back to its -1 position, which, I'm sorry, its 0 position, which will close this switch once that's a position on the stepper, which represents a closed switch. And that's what's going to fire our...
and some games will label that the -1 position. This labels it the 0, closed at 0,
yeah.
C at 0.
So when you hit the button, this thing resets, closes that switch, and then that's what fires our reset relay. The reset relay then will activate this next circuit below it, which starts firing our, sends pulses to our 10K unit, and that's what's going to walk it forward to get back to 0. This one does not reset, it's like a score reel, it walks forward to the next 0 position. And you can see down here, my 10K unit, my 100,000 unit has to walk up to, from wherever it is, up to this 9th position, and when it gets to that last position, it fires that last step up, one pulse to the step up relay of the 100K unit, which steps it out of -1 and into 0. And now we're ready to start the game. And that is going to shut off all the other the reset relay and the other reset devices.
And you can sort of see this and hear it if you play some of the wood rails in the hall. As long as they have a score up, when you start a new game, you're going to hear a thunk and a ding, 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 and the lights are probably going to move through the 10K stepper, and you can actually see it happening if you look at that. If you're watching that while it's going. And now we get to when everything has finished resetting and feedback has been sent back. How do we end reset? Relays need to turn off, or trip latch relays then get latched or tripped. I never can keep track of what their nomenclature is going to be.
We're waiting for all the feedback that the game requires to come back from the rest of the game, essentially.
Yeah. So here's some examples. Let's see. So the Gottlieb example on the right, waiting to see that all they call them drum units, those are score reels. They're all at 0, and that's going to allow let's see, when they...
so the D relay is waiting for all of...
oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at this one.
That's the Bally one.
Yeah, that was...
The Bally's on the right, yeah.
Let's see.
So these are going to keep my reset relay above it active until all of those open up.
Yeah.
Right? But this is just examples of this, the kinds of feedback that you're going to see, the switches that are going to keep the circuit active until they have accomplished what they want to. A more elaborate game, I think this might be Grand Prix, has 20 score reels that it waits for, but it also waits for 2 different bonus units to get back to 0. So it's got a number of more, many more switches than most games that all have to close for this thing, or all have to open for this thing to come to the end of reset. If you have a late model Chicago coin or early EM Stern game, you may have this score reel with a wiper arm on it. I don't know if you've run across these before. These are kind of problematic, and be careful if you're shopping for a game.
We should say, there are a lot of games that have a wiper on a score reel. What's unique in this situation is they depend on that wiper for the 0, the run out switch, and the feedback switch, and the 9 switches there too. And so just seeing a wiper there is one thing, but in these Chicago coin games, the other switches aren't there. It's all wiper.
It's all wiper.
And there are some issues that can come up with that wiper.
So the wipers are all mounted on this plastic arm, and many of these plastic arms have warped or cracked, and so the wipers are not making good contact anymore. Some of these games, it's not shown in this drawing, these are solder lugs, but some of these games actually have edge connectors, PC edge connectors that connect to the score reel cards. So not only do I have an often compromised connection through this wiper, I have an often compromised connection through the edge connector. And to make things even worse, I have to get all 16 of them in series. So there's 16 switches end to end to end to end to end to end, plus possibly 2 more connections per edge connector. So there's another 32 connections there. Even when they're all closed, you may have enough dirt and grime on your thing that the resistance is enough to keep the coil from firing. So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong with these. And they use the same wire color between all of the 16.
It's a cautionary tale. I mean, the games can be made to work,
yes,
but getting parts could be a challenge if you've got something that's so warped you can't adjust around it.
It takes a fair bit of patience, and it builds character.
As if the rest of this weren't already difficult enough, we'll throw a wrench in the works with that.
Yeah. So move on then.
Yeah.
So Gottlieb in the early 70s for their
I think they did even earlier. Actually,
they went from in their multiplayer games. They went to the device called the player unit, which is keeping track of both the ball in play and the player up, as well as first ball, last ball, things like that. And it's if you've ever reset a Gottlieb, late model Gottlieb multiplayer, you've recognized that cadence, that loud click, 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 clack, 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 in pulses of 5, as it's going through and walking through and resetting score reels and whatnot. And there's a lot of math that's going on. There's a lot of switches and a lot of positions on this thing. It's I believe a 30-stepper with something happening in most of these steps. And to get ready for this talk, I actually tried to unwind one in my head. And what I came up with, looking at my sample size of one game, this is what I came up with. The various positions on the step unit have very specific functions. So the first 20 positions on this thing are strictly for tracking the ball in play and the player up. So for example, position 0 to 3 is ball 1 for each of the 4 players. And the next 4 positions are ball 2 for the next 4 players. So if you've ever...
I was just going to say, you can see this while you're playing the game. If you're on a multiplayer Gottlieb game and you're playing a one-player game, when the ball drains, you'll see it. It's going to light player 2, light player 3, light player 4, and then go back to player 1. That is it skipping over the other player's steps. It can't jump ahead. It has to go through each step. Mm-hmm. Is that what you were going to say,
yep.
Probably? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So it knows how many players have paid, and it will skip over any players that aren't playing the game. So the first, from 0 to 19, those are all positions for somebody's playing some ball and some player. But when I get to position 19, something called the last ball interlock relay fires, and that's what triggers game over. If I haven't, it happens earlier naturally for a 3-ball game or for a single player. Position 19 is for a 4-player last ball. But that last ball relay can trip anywhere in this thing. But the point is, when I get to game over, the game has ended, right? It's sitting there, potentially scores on all 4 sets of score reels. The reset sequence to get back to starting a new game is what trips up a lot of people. It's a pretty complicated sequence that we're going to step through here in a minute. At a high level, what's happening is that I have to get from wherever this game ended to position 20. So position 20 is the one where I start to reset score reels. So maybe I ended a 3-ball game, or maybe I unplugged it. I could be anywhere from position 0 to 19, not knowing how that game before me ended. So I have to walk this thing up to get to position 20. At position 20, the player unit stops, and suddenly the player 1 and player 2 score reels start to reset. And they reset and take as long as they need to. And when they're done, this thing will take a step to position 21, and it will repeat that process for players 3 and 4. And then it has to walk its way back to position 0. Now, it may do some things in other games. In the game I looked at, there was nothing really interesting happening during from positions 22 to 29. So it's just trying to walk its way back to position 0, where we pick up again player 1, ball 1. Okay? So to illustrate that, this is the generic drawing that's for the, here on the left is the add player unit coil. Where's my, here. So that's the solenoid that's going to advance this stepper, right, this 30-step stepper in the back box typically. And that's the guy that has to walk through all of these positions and accomplish all these things. And if you're stuck in reset and you can't get through it, often what'll happen, what you can try is go to the back box and manually push in the plunger on the player unit and see if it'll pick up. What you've done is you've allowed it to skip a step and see if it'll pick up and run back to position 0 from there. But to get the ball, to get things started.
Well, one thing I like to make sure people understand, especially when you're looking at this, let me see if I can get that. So.
Oh yeah, so this,
you know what I'm gonna
this circuit here is actually serpentine, right? It's winding back and forth because it's so long.
Yeah, your schematic is typically showing sort of a power rail on this side and a power rail on that side, and something happens in between. To prevent it from being this wide just for this circuit, they run it back and forth. But really, just picture that as a longer line between the two power rails. There's nothing special going on here. It's just a really long line. And if you look at the normally closed on Z1 and Z2, that's the path that you're following when you're in a game. The run-out switches that are shown parallel to that is more what you're using when you're trying to reset a game. At Z1 and Z2, get energized at different times and open that switch. I don't know if that's,
we'll walk
it's
through
hard
that here.
to, okay, you're gonna walk through that.
So to start, when you press that start button, what happens is the S relay fires, and that brings up my score motors to start running. And this is the path in red that's being exercised to get my player unit to walk forward to find position 20, okay? Because I could be anywhere from 0 to 19, right? I need to find position 20. So initially, I am getting, where is it? These 5 pulses, right? This is a motor 1A switch, and I'm getting these 5 pulses coming out of the score motor. And they're flying right by all these switches and taking this bypass through Z1 here and through Z2 switches here, and just walking that player unit forward, okay? When I finally find, when a stepper reaches position 20, whoops, I went the wrong way. When I get to position 20, the stepper actually closes this circuit here, which fires my Z1 relay, which means I'm going to stop that stepper for a minute and take the time to reset the player 1 and player 2 score wheels. With Z1 fired, why did...
We should say that switch will then open. It's not... Yeah, that switch opens. This was not a schematic you created, so we couldn't change it, but...
I'm just coloring the same schematic over and over again, yes. Yeah. So when Z1 fires up there because I'm in position 20, I open the switch in the red box below, and that kills my bypass path. I now have to actually do the push-ups to get all these score reels down here to reset. And so the motor starts throwing, it's still running, it's throwing pulses at these score reels, and gradually, one at a time, they reset. And once they've all reset, the pulse from this 1A can finally get through this long path and advance my player unit. Well, it's going to advance to position 21, right? And the same thing is going to repeat. Now I'm in 21, and now Z2 is going to close instead of Z1, which is going to open up this thing that we were using to bypass. So I can no longer bypass around 3 and 4, players 3 and 4. I actually have to pause there and reset those score reels, sending all the pulses through that way. So you can see here I'm bypassing the lower player 1 and player 2 switches, but I'm having to do my push-ups and get through player 3 and player 4. Once that finally, the score reel's all reset. The player unit picks up again and freewheels its way back to position 0 using the switch in the red box here is P5B. It's one of the switches mounted to the player unit, and that will bring me back to 0 position.
Stepping past those
Yeah.
steps that don't do anything.
Right, and so the way the schematic was drawn in the original drawing is that it was drawn in player 1, ball 1. So that's how all the switches are drawn, because all these score reels have now been reset. And I'll present here an animation of this schematic. There's it's a bit abbreviated, but what's going to happen is that I've got, on the right side again, I've got score reels that have to be reset. And it's going to take me 3 cycles to get through this. And right now I've got this player unit shown that is in position 19. So I'm at the end of the previous game. The first thing that has to happen is I have to step down to position 20, and then I will reset 1 score reel, and then step to position 21 and reset the other score reel, and then find my way home again. So we start off with the player unit just now stepping into position 20, and now I'm going to reset one of these score reels from 8 to 9 and from 9 to 0. And then that's going to let the player unit take another step from 20 to 21, and then I reset the second score reel. And now with both score reels reset, the player unit itself is going to have to walk its way back to position 0. I've cut out positions 24 to 29 to save time, but eventually I would get back to 0 and this game would be ready to play. So that's most of the highlights that we wanted to cover for resetting. Let's talk briefly, with a few minutes maybe, about common failures and what you might do to evaluate them.
So, if you're pressing the replay button and nothing happens, what could the problem be? Well, you might have a problem with the button. You might have a broken wire or a switch isn't closing. But more often than not, you either don't have credits or you haven't set it to free play somehow. There is a Jones plug that plugs the door in. You got to make sure that's in position. The ball count unit at 0 is a really interesting one. There are Gottlieb, I don't know if this is what we were thinking when we put this bullet on. There are Gottlieb games where if you've taken the ball out of the game and you reset, or it's got, the situation I often face is the ball got stuck on the playfield, someone hit the replay button, and the ball count unit went to the 0 position, which is kind of a reset position. It's not ball 1, it's before ball 1. It advances when the ball is put into the shooter lane. It rolls over a switch. The ball's stuck on the playfield, you've hit the reset button, and it has done a reset, but there's no ball to move it to ball 1. The game seems broken, so someone turns it off. Now when you turn it back on, you cannot get the replay button to work because the ball count unit is at 0. It'll never work. The coin switches work, but the replay doesn't. It's just the way the game is designed. So I've had games where if the ball gets stuck on the playfield, this is at our museum, so ball gets stuck on the playfield, it won't start, and I've trained our staff, if that's the situation, you can either coin it or, I mean, you're not going to go in the back and try to fix it, but I think that's what we were probably putting it in there. It's a very weird special case where you got partway through a reset and you just can't be able to finish it now. And that's why you say, check it's a coin unit. Does a coin chute or a coin switch work? That'll often overcome some of those problems.
And this would be a great situation to break out your alligator clip jumper, and you can jump around various switches in this circuit to see what you can do to make it go, and that would identify for you which of these switches isn't closing. The score reels start but don't finish. It's only a partial reset. this is a circuit we saw earlier. It may be that some of these switches are opening too soon. They're not staying closed long enough to keep your score advancing to 0. That would be a common issue. The SB armature, we talked about it at the beginning. If that switch is not opening and closing it as it should be, you would never get through. It would keep trying to reset that bank thinking that it hadn't completed its own reset yet.
I think I've often had it where everything actually has reset, but this switch hasn't closed, and it won't fire.
Okay.
It's kind of both cases cause you to not be able to finish.
Or your fuse could be bad. In the red box, there's a fuse there that's dedicated to this bank, right? If your bank isn't resetting, in this situation, it might just be the fuse too.
Yeah.
Okay, so my score reel's reset to 0, but the score motor keeps running, right? This is the second switch on the score reels that needs to behave properly. This is the feedback switch, and if somehow my feedback is not getting back to my reset circuit, the motor will keep trying, thinking that you haven't gotten there yet. So these are two different manufacturers' approaches to using those 0 position switches to end the reset sequence.
I think we ended up talking about most of these as we went through in the beginning as well, because the bonus unit we've talked about, it's going to have it more often than not has a 0 switch that's sending some feedback, and even if it resets but the switch doesn't end up getting closed, it doesn't finish reset because of one switch not closing.
In this scenario, you would see a bonus unit that had stepped down to 0 and kept trying to reset itself, and kept getting pulses to reset some more. And it's because of that switch hasn't done its job.
That actually was that comment made me think of something. If you find that your game is stuck in reset and you keep getting pulses to the bonus unit to reset, it doesn't mean it's the bonus unit that's causing the problem. It's like the motor is not, it's the victim, not the culprit. The bonus unit is going to keep getting reset pulses while you're stuck in reset. It doesn't mean that it's the problem. Something else could be the problem, but when you're in reset, all this stuff all the circuits are made to complete reset. So the ball count unit could keep trying to reset, the reset bonus unit will keep trying to reset. That's not necessarily where your problem is. They're all going to keep trying.
In this drawing here, the reset seems to complete, but nothing scores. There are different quadrants and different sections of your schematic. One part of the game is often turned off entirely once the game has ended, or if you've tilted or something. That makes your playfield kind of go dead. But the circuitry that has to deal with reset and coining, starting a new game, that's typically always live. And these parts of the schematic are often separated by these switches in the red boxes. These are the power rails that are coming off of your transformer. And there can be 2 or 3 or 4 switches in that power rail that provide power to the top part of the schematic, or the part that's used for playing. So if your game does reset but your playfield won't score or your flippers don't work, it may be because one of these switches on one of these relays hasn't closed again to provide power to the whole game. We talked briefly about the player and coin unit at the beginning. If your game starts up and resets just fine, but it always starts a multiplayer game, for example, that's because one of these units, the coin unit or the player unit, has not reset back to 0. That's one of these are the devices that don't provide the feedback. So they get a single pulse and they have to make the best use of it, and if it's gummed up or binding somehow, it may not reset and get back to 0. So you score reels all do the right thing, but this thing will always put you in a multiplayer game because that stepper hasn't come back. If you're lucky, your game comes with a manual, and your manual has a complete reset sequence in it. A lot of people overlook the game manual, but this is for a Bally game. You'll often find them in Williams games as well, and even in some even Gottlieb manuals will have some of these. But this is a very detailed step-by-step sequence for this particular game of what reset should look like. So often when online, when we get a question about, my game, my game gets, doesn't finish reset. Well, if the game has a manual and the owner has the manual, we'll say, well, how far does it get through the checklist? And that's where we can start to troubleshoot. So this can be invaluable if your game has that kind of documentation.
And there are some other resources that we can point you to for further learning of startup sequences. There's a good book available from Pinball Resource at pbresource.com. I don't even remember. If you look at the area where he has books, you'll see a book by Hank DeJager. I don't remember the title of it.
I don't remember the title
we didn't
either.
put that in the slide. We just call it the DeJager book, yeah. We showed an example of some game manuals. There's a website called pinrepair.com that has a lot of information for repairing EM, electromechanical games, as well as other kinds of games. But it does have a breakdown of some startup sequences. Mark's website, funwithpinball.com, you have information there. And the online repair clinic. So when you get to that website, I think it's under events and clinics.
You can, you'll find information about the clinic. You can also add yourself to the mailing list if you'd like to hear about upcoming clinics.
Yeah. And I mean, people have talked on Pinside for years. There's more and more activity in different groups on Facebook now where people are seeking out help with solving all kinds of problems on their games. And now we're already over time, but if we have a couple of questions, we could probably field them, or you can catch us later.
Questions, anybody? I'll pass a mic around because we are recording this, and this will be on our YouTube channel for Marco Pinball.
And thank you, Emoto, for putting all these together.
Yeah, thank you all. It's exciting.
So you can see if your game isn't completing reset, there's no simple answer. It would be nice if we could just say, oh, well, then look here. But there's so much that it has to accomplish to get here. It's not simple. All right.
Thank you.
We have a question. Well, thank you.
Just wait, one question.
Thanks, guys. Just one quick comment. The book is called Manual for the Repair and Maintenance of Electromechanical Pinball Machines, 1960 to 1977. And it is available, if you want to take the trouble, at the internetarchive.org. And it's available there as a PDF. If you have lots of paper in your printer.
I couldn't remember where that was, but yeah.
It's a very big book.
Okay.
Thanks for that extra info. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. Hey.
Mark, you had a slide that was showing the steps for the player unit.
Yes.
Is that anywhere? I have not seen that before. Do you have that out on your website somewhere?
Not yet.
Okay.
That was for this presentation, and eventually it will find its way to my website. But yeah, that one, right?
Yes, that one. Yes.
And again, you said you did this looking at one game.
That's one reason it's not on the website.
I can help you. We could look at a few more and just see, did other steps get used, and is there some commonality in that?
But that's a big topic in itself, the player unit. It's a big, gnarly beast. And this is just an introduction to the player unit.
We could do a whole other hour.
Next year.
I think we're wrapping it up. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, welcome everybody. We are here with David Volansky from Pacific Pinball Museum and Mark Gibson with Fun with Pinball. Two men that have been helping all of us learn so much about electromechanical games. So thank you so much, because it's very important information, you know. So everyone pay attention. Like I said, it's going to be on YouTube, so you can watch it again later. And yeah, this is going to be Electromechanical Scoring Relays Demystified. Super exciting. So take it away, David.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so thank you, Emoto. David Volansky from the Pacific Pinball Museum. I'm a technician volunteer there, and today we'll talk about scoring circuits. But what I was hoping to get out of today, and let me make sure we talk about Mark.
I'm Mark.
Sitting here, Mark Gibson from Fun with Pinball. It's funwithpinball.com. A lot of great content out there, and I think it's all electromechanical, right? Okay. So thinking about the objective for today, we're going to use a scoring relay, but it's really to kind of learn more about relays and what's going on with all those relays. And hopefully everyone's going to have some sort of aha moment today where you've worked on these before, or you're just getting started and you're like, oh, that's what's going on there. Through the slide deck, we'll have some simplified schematics. Might be, if you're still getting used to reading schematics, hopefully something with just a few circuits on, a simplified circuit will give you a little simpler orientation to understanding what's going on there. We also will have hands-on demo at the table. We're going to build up the circuit from scratch. We'll do like one switch at a time, and you'll see how it builds up. And then just a reminder, you guys sitting here are audience 1. People out there are audience 2. That's very important to me. I want to get a good session that people can learn from, not just today, but you guys can go back and review. Other people are going to see this for the first time. So I like an interactive session, but if we do have questions in between, let's make sure we get the microphone to you. And bear with me, if you're asking a question about something we're still going to get to, I'll hold off. If it's a little off target, we'll hold it for later. If it's helping clarify what's happening right then, or I'm sorry, did I say clarify what's happening right then, I'll certainly want to take it right then. Okay. So first, even before step 1, I wanted to just sort of highlight a relay to make sure people know what I'm talking about. If we could get the camera on the relay. A relay is just a device where you're going to apply voltage to the coil, and it's going to cause an armature to pull in, and it's going to change the state of all the switches. Some of them start open and then they close. Some of them start closed and they open. We also have make-break switches. But that's what's going on with a relay. It's just a set of switches whose state is going to change when you apply voltage to the coil. Now,
it's also a way of replicating a signal. Whenever you're firing this coil, all the circuits that are tied to these switches change somehow. So it's one thing is affecting many things.
Yeah. So, and now we're actually going to start the scoring circuit without the relay. So, you're playing your game, the ball hits something on the play field, it's going to score. Well, if that just went to a score reel, and we'll build that circuit and demonstrate that, there's a lot of things you don't get. You don't get any sound. You can only score 9 points. There's no carryover. There's no second score reel. And there's no other features that we'll be talking about. But let's go ahead and take a look at just a switch interacting with a score reel. And it's a little, see if you can get it to miss. Yeah. If you guys can hear that, and I don't know that the camera would be able to see it anyway. Particularly if you've got a switch behind a rubber and the ball's just going to kind of graze it, you can get a small close of that switch, and it's not very reliable. Before we're done, we'll be adding reliability through the relay to that circuit. So looking at what we've got here, and again, a simplified schematic. This, let's see. If you bring the slide up on the screen, I can point. Otherwise, I don't know where I'm going. So this is a symbol for a transformer. So that's where our power is coming from. We've got the coil on the score reel, and we have that one switch wired up. And the convention we're going to hopefully follow here is I think we've got this power rail coming in black.
Black, yep.
And this side will be red.
Yep.
And then anything else we need to do, we'll be using green and white wires and probably not necessarily following a convention. But you'll see as we build up, that's going to continue to go. So again, you saw this. The switch closes. It fires the coil for the score reel. And something to notice about all score reels, I think this is going to be true of all score reels, when you energize it, it's going to pull in the plunger, but the reel doesn't move. It's when you de-energize it that the reel changes state. So one thing, just a tip for when you're working on a game, if you think you have a score reel stuck, if you turn the game off and the score reel goes to the next number, what's going on is it's locked in, you turn the power off and now it advances, okay, I've got some switches stuck, but that is a good thing to understand about how your score reel works.
All steppers, in fact, all steppers arm themselves when they're given power, but they don't actually activate or step forward or back. They don't move until power is relaxed. It's the spring that does the work of actually moving the stepper, including the score reel.
And the important part of that in steppers and in score reels, we'll get into it a little bit here, is the switches that are going to change state primarily when the power is released. We'll see one switch here that changes when it's energized, but most of what's happening changes when the power is dropped from a stepper or a score reel.
So that's actually what that animation was showing you in the slide there. So the circuit is active, it's live, but nothing is changing until that circuit goes black and the power is cut. That's when the reel actually changes its value. So when it's green, there's current running through that whole thing, but nothing changes on the score reel until it goes black and that switch opens up.
Okay, now we're going to introduce a relay. And in doing so, Mark is going to start to do the wiring. But at this point, we're going to add a relay just to sort of complicate things. We're not going to take advantage of the relay just yet, but we're setting the stage for being able to add in those other features I was talking about. So this is just a very simple example. I'll go ahead and put up the schematic so we can
do that. That will help me.
And that'll help him. Even though we've worked on these so much, it's good to use the schematic and take a look. Do you want to have it in front of you, or
up there?
Good enough. All right. Yeah. So what we're going to have is, let's see if we could. Oh, the schematic is there on the screen. Let's see. Did my mouse show up?
So what's happening here is I started out with a switch driving the solenoid. Now instead I'm going to make the switch fire the relay. Okay.
So yeah, the switch will now fire the relay. The relay.
So let's check that. Make sure that still works. So now my relay is firing instead of this. And the light bulb here is just showing me that the coil is active. It's telling me that I'm getting power. It's a debugging tool. Okay.
That's not in your game.
All right, so now I've got the relay responding to the switch, and now we're going to tie the score reel back so it's fired by the relay. Correct?
Yep.
Is that the next one? All right.
So again, the same switch that we were using to fire the reel is now going to fire the relay. A switch that's normally open on the relay will close and fire the reel when we fire that relay. So stepping through what's going to happen, again, the relay now has a switch going to the reel instead of directly. And again, no added features here. We're just setting the stage for doing more with that relay. But recognize, you've got these scoring relays in the head of your game. There's probably 3 of them for, say, 1 point, 10 point, and 100 points, or 10. I'm probably going to keep referring to 10 because I'm just used to that the 1 is a dummy. So 10 point, 100 point, and 1,000 point. And so now we can go take a look at that, and it's working. You just...
So the target now, the switch behind the target is firing my relay, and this normally open switch on the relay is actually firing my score reel. And again, the score reel doesn't advance until everything relaxes, right?
And looking at the animated circuit, really, again, there's not that much going on. We're ready to add more. Okay. First thing we'll add is some sound. So we're going to take another one of the switches on the relay. We're going to connect it to a chime bar. So we've got our chime bar here. And again, we'll run the black wire from the source to one of the lugs.
Yep, one of the lugs.
And then we'll use one of the switches on the relay to get over there. So if you are working on your game and the score reels are working great, but the chime isn't going, you can look at that relay. There is a switch on that relay that's just there to complete the power circuit to the chime. And again, this is a simple example, and we're only looking at like a one-player game. When you get to a multiplayer game, the chime actually remains pretty simple, even in a multiplayer game. So looking at the circuit, we've added another line here where, let's see, where's my cursor? Can we get the slide up on the screen? If we can get the slide on the screen, I can point to what I'm talking about. So again, we hit the 1 point thing. So what we added here is this additional line. So now we've taken another chime on the point relay. I'm sorry, we've taken another switch on the point relay, and we've just tied it to the chime solenoid. And we could hear Mark. All right? Everyone up? Making sense so far? Okay. Now, let's try and demonstrate something about unreliability.
All right.
So hitting that switch, and again, it depends on the switch adjustments now. We may get a chime and not a score reel going. Look at that. Now, if you give it a good solid hit, it's doing both. But if you just get like a light hit, you could be, now, and we could have the score reel going and not the chime. It's a problem we face. So to add reliability to this circuit.
Well, let me interrupt for a moment.
Sure.
The reason could be a couple of reasons why we're getting one but not the other, right? It could be there's more spring tension on one coil or the other, or one coil might be more responsive, or maybe one of these switches is opening or closing before the others, right? So there's all sorts of variability in here that would introduce all sorts of interesting problems to your game in this unreliable configuration. We're trying to drive home the fact that this isn't good enough yet. This is not what your games do.
Okay. So a lock-in circuit, and this is we'll have another example later where there's more time involved, but a lock-in circuit has, it makes your relay stay on for a period of time until some other circuit opens, well, I'm not sure I'm going to say that just right. Let's see. With a lock-in switch on your relay, the relay will turn on and stay on until some other switch that you've designed in is going to open. So in a scoring sequence, it's something that happens very fast, but does provide the reliability. A similar sort of thing is used in a pop bumper. If you get a light hit on a pop bumper and you don't have a lock-in circuit, you might just get a light pulse out of that pop bumper. If the lock-in circuit is working right, you always get a good strong kick. So this is an example of a lock-in circuit to kind of show you how that works. Now, are you building a separate?
I've built the manual switch here, so let's go through that.
So if we look at what's happening here, we have the.
Here we go. Yep.
Where's my mouse? Okay, so we're going to have this activate switch, which we could think of as like a scoring switch that's going to turn on the relay. Once it's on, the locking switch of the relay, along with something that's normally closed, so we have a normally closed switch here that we're using, is going to hold this relay on until this opens, right? So we're going to activate, which is going to turn the relay on and close this switch, and it will just stay on. So we have a little animation here. We activate.
Well, you do it manually.
Oh, is it a step through?
So when you first activate that first target, right?
Yeah.
That closes the switch on the top path. But now I have both paths very briefly contributing to that coil to keep it on. But the switch behind the target, the activate target, is going to open up instantly. But that second path will persist. So I can stretch out that pulse now as long as I need to accomplish something. Whatever homework I have to do, I can keep remembering that, I still have work to do, and only let go of that when I've done everything that needs to be done.
And then, that's the holding.
So now we've let go of the initial target that says, I owe you 50 points, right? But the relay, for example, is now remembering I still owe him 50 points. And I can hold that relay active, or extra ball, or some other feature, right? I can hold that relay active until I finish the work and I can release the coil. So yeah, when you activate the target on the bottom right, that's what breaks that second path and lets the relay finally relax.
And so now let's look at it in the build here.
Oops. Is that supposed to happen?
Oops. Let's see what we got.
So we're going to talk a little bit about troubleshooting. Let me back that out and get back to where I was. Right. And I want a normally... I didn't put the lock-in switch in here, did I? So I'm using a normally open switch on my relay that will close when it activates. And that strings along to a normally closed switch that's somewhere else in the game that we don't know. That will give us our end condition, right? So now I can activate this thing, and it stays active until I do 1/1000, 2/1000. I'm done doing whatever I need to do, and I can let it go. So that allows me to keep that thing indefinitely. Right now, it's actually warming up my coils because they're active, right? So it's typically, most relays, 50 points or a pop bumper or something is going to be, from a fraction of a second to a bigger fraction of a second.
So this is sort of the slow motion version of a scoring relay. He can turn it on and turn it off manually. Okay, so I saw a question came up. Let's get a microphone here. Yeah. Hold on. Let's turn it up. All right.
In a real game circuit, is normally the release like one of the switches that...
Oh, that's the next step. We're going to actually tie it into the circuit. Yeah. This was just to give you sort of the slow motion. We can, actually, since it's actually live, if you tried to have that unreliable switch, Oh, okay, so we can still, now we're looking at sort of switch adjustments to make sure the lock-in switch is the one that's gonna close first. But in most cases, it's probably gonna be more reliable at this point. Adjusting the switches so that the lock-in switch closes first is a little finicky, depending on how much space you've got. Mark, I've got an adjuster if you wanna try and, or you wanna, I think are we good enough? I think we're good enough.
Magic tool.
Okay, so now, let's go ahead and instead of using the manual normally closed switch, that's just going to move over to a switch that's on your score reel. Let's see, he's got it. Is that one?
So every score reel has an, except for this one, has...
No, the highest denomination that wouldn't have
right.
it, so.
Every score reel, except for the highest denomination, has behind, at the back end of the plunger, an end of stroke switch that opens up. So when the plunger pulls all the way in, it opens that switch. That's the way it's telling the rest of the game, I've done all the work here I need to do, don't wait for me anymore, don't send me any more power. So that's what that end of stroke switch is going to do. It's going to become this switch that I've been doing manually. So, you know, manually, I have to come through and press it, but now I'm going to move this over to the score reel and let the score reel do that for me. And it will seem like it's happening instantly because it happens so quickly, but it's actually extending the time that relay is active to the time that it takes to pull that plunger all the way back. And once I'm all the way back, that's all the work I need to do. I can let it go. So I'll just take this switch out of my circuit, and I will use the end of stroke switch. So I've brought all my switches out to the back of this where I can just clip in without having to find them and label them. So I can grab my end of stroke switch, which is normally closed. And now it's staying on a short period longer than it would have because it's waiting for that plunger to signal back, I've gotten home, you can let go.
Why does the last one not happen?
So the highest digit, there's typically 3 or 4 score reels. The highest digit, there's usually not a target that will give you the 10,000 or whatever the highest digit is. And so it's borrowing a pulse from the neighbor as it carries over the 9. It's a subtly different circuit. It's an economy that they decided, we'll just share that pulse instead of giving you your own relay.
Yeah, we're actually going to build a carryover circuit that, well, when we get to the carryover circuit, we'll talk about the difference between the highest denomination and the others. So now we've got a switch activating a relay that then advances the score reel, does the chime, and has lock-in, setting the stage for us to continue. Now, one last thing to know about lock-in, I guess we're going to cover a few slides here. We're doing sort of a one-player sort of game. If you're working on a multiplayer game, the way the lock-in circuit works is there's actually that end of stroke switch on each of the 10-point score reels, or sometimes the schematic will call them drum units. So that's the DU, by the way, drum unit. Each of them has an end of stroke switch. Only one of them is going to open for the current player. And by opening one of those, you can drop out the lock-in circuit. The cautionary tale is, if your lock-in circuit isn't working, it could be any of the score reels not having a good, tight, or have a broken wire. A lot of times you'll find these switches might be, like half of the switch is gone. It broke off years ago. No one was trying to solve that problem. So if you're not getting lock-in on a multiplayer game, don't just look at the one player that you've noticed it on. It could be any of the players that have that switch not working.
Let me throw in something here that just occurred to me. So this example is a bit contrived to sort of to walk you through how the end of stroke used to stretch out that pulse a little bit. And a broken lock-in switch is not the end of the world. Most of the time you'll get the right score. You might miss one periodically, but your game won't burn up. However, this very same circuit is used by a pop bumper, right? And there's a relay somewhere that sends power into that pop bumper coil. So the switch under the skirt is the one that fires the relay, and the end of stroke switch is the one that says, you can let go, stop sending me power. Well, if your end of stroke switch never closes because it's not adjusted properly, what happens? You hit the skirt, the relay fires, the coil starts to pull down because it's getting power from the relay, and that end of stroke never opens up. Suddenly you're 1/1000, 2/1000, I'm overheating, 3/1000, 4/1000, I'm smoking, right? In 15 or 20 or 30 seconds, you'll have a situation, right? So depending on the circuit, the end of stroke switch can be critical. This is just for demonstration, but don't ignore all of your end of stroke switches.
Right. And just thinking about pop bumpers, maybe next year we'll do a pop bumper version of this talk. There are a lot of times where, probably for economies, you'll have a relay that fires 2 pop bumpers. So if you hit either pop bumper, they both pop. I don't know why they designed it this way, but both end of stroke switches have to open to make the circuit drop. If a wire is broken to one of those coils, the relay turns on, one of your pop bumpers fires, stays fired, and if you haven't caught that problem is happening, you'll burn up that coil, you'll blow a fuse, and then you'll have a game to fix. So those end of stroke switches on pop bumpers are important in that, especially if you've got a relay that's firing 2 of them and one of them isn't going, you're going to have a problem. Now, the first comment on this slide, determining if your score relay lock-in is a sensitive touch, and maybe afterwards or I can bring people to a game and we can try it. People at home, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Just kind of do this. If it's working, if you activate the relay by hand and don't do like a hard push, just kind of push it a little bit, you'll feel the armature pull away from your finger as the switch actually pulls it to all the way on. So, I already did this at the show. I had a game and it wasn't doing something reliably. I can't remember what game it was already. But I was back there and it wasn't locking in until I adjusted some of the lock-in switches. It was a multiplayer game and it wasn't like the current player situation. But I was able to get it to finally start locking in. It's a really light touch. But Mark, you're feeling it. I
can feel it, and you're welcome to try it when we're done. Come up and give it a try. We'll have you sign a waiver, and then you can come and play.
So, and now we've got the example where we've seen. Again, you can't always demonstrate the unreliable nature, but now, a glancing blow of that switch should always chime, always score. Like it's not going to do one and not the other, and it shouldn't be out of whack like that. Mm-hmm. And here's an animation of this going. We've seen it already down here.
It's just adding in the lock-in circuit to what we've seen.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to add carryover. Again, I said one of the reasons you want to have a relay and not just a switch tied to your score reel is you want to be able to do more than 9 points, right? So now we're going to go ahead and add on to our circuit so that when you're scoring on that lower point drum, if what's showing is 9, it'll advance to 0 and the next one will also advance. And in this situation, we're wiring it up as if it were the highest denomination. So the carryover, which, I'll point to it when, let's see, we have this up here. So what we show here is actually a 10-point relay, but what we're going to wire up is just the 10-point reel, as if it were the highest denomination. Did we do 2 relays?
Do we need the second relay for
I don't-
50 points?
Yeah. We're going to...
Oh, no, we need the second one for 50.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need the second one for
all
50.
right. Yep.
So we're wiring this up as if it were the highest denomination. So scoring relay has a switch that will close. That switch is wired up in series with the 9-point switch of our score reel. So if you guys have worked on score reels, you know when you advance from 8 to 9, and again, when you power the reel, nothing changes yet. When you depower and it advances to 9, there's a switch that will close. When you are sending your next pulse to that relay, to that score reel, there's another switch that is in series with the 9 switch, and it will make the next higher denomination advance. That can go to a higher denomination relay if it's not the highest reel. And oftentimes if it is the highest reel, it just goes straight to the reel. And in fact, that highest denomination reel also doesn't even have a 9 switch. It doesn't need to. It's not going to carry over to a reel that isn't there. So let's see. Looking at that circuit, when we energize, let's see, we put that schematic up. We'll switch to Mark in a moment. So again, we're going to close our scoring switch, which turns on the 1-point relay. Let's see, did I go too fast?
No, not. You do it. It'll step 1 frame for each slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I missed that we had. So we're displaying 0 and 8. So now we're looking at 0 and 9, and this switch has closed. And when we energize the 1-point relay, the 1-point relay switch that's over here has closed, and now it's going to be. It has energized the next reel up, and after the de-energize, now we're looking at 1 and 0. And so we went from 0, 9 to 10, and we can see that in our build.
Maybe I'll disconnect the chime.
That's sort of the basic build. I don't know if we have questions at this. Oh, we were going to talk about the carryover. I'm trying to remember. Why did we not have the switches? So, in the case of what we've built here, where the highest denomination score reel, on your game, let's say you're going to go from you have a 10, a 100, a 1,000, and then you have a 10,000 reel, but there's no 10,000 relay. There's nothing on the playfield that scores 10,000, right? So they don't bother building a relay. There's probably not, you wouldn't have to have a chime associated with 10,000 because you got the 1,000 chime going off already when so in that situation, the switch goes straight to the reel like we did, and we're not worried about the end of stroke of that reel. We already have an end of stroke keeping the circuit on from the other reel. We're not worried about a chime. It's just not necessary to have a relay for that last one. Okay, let's get a microphone for questions.
You know, in games that have like over the top or light up 100,000, when you roll over that last reel, do they just add a 9th position switch and then that has a lock relay, or how do they do that part?
So did the question come through okay? Okay. It's hard to give a general answer because games do things differently. I'll think about a game I know that has 100,000 light.
Bow and arrow.
I was thinking of a Bally late, yeah. I was thinking of something like a bow and arrow or a wizard. I think that this is all the same way. Those, I believe, are interlock relays. They could have been just it'll stay on. You can rate it right. In that situation, the highest denomination relay, along with the current player's highest denomination or highest denomination reel, right, has a 9 switch. When it advances that relay, it uses a switch, just like it would for carryover, through the 9 switch, and it just turns on the 100,000 relay. The 100,000 relay has multiple switches. One is going to turn the light on, 100,000 light in the thing. The other switch, and I'd have to kind of think this through and look at a schematic, but we haven't talked about how we do award replays based on score, but something in that, you called it over the top, but the 100,000 light, something there is going to be a switch that the game can use to say, oh, by the way, this player also already has 100,000 points plus whatever is showing on the score reels. So there's a switch there that is involved in a replay score. There are other switches there, and I'm trying to think of what they would be used for. But yeah, it just uses a relay. You could think of it as a scoring, well, it's not a scoring relay because there's one per player. That's another thing is the 10-point relay on a multiplayer game, there's only one 10-point relay. And there's something else in the game that knows which player's drum unit to actually send those pulses to. While the chime pulses always go to the same chime, the carryover is managed for a multiplayer game in a couple of different ways, turns out. Sometimes there's a stepper unit, sometimes it's actually in the score reel. They have another switch in there. I don't want to get too deep into every different permutation here. Does that kind of get at that question? Yeah. There was a second question. Was it the same, or do you want to? It was the same question. Oh, excellent. The same question. All right. So I've talked about some of the additional features that we're not going to demonstrate. But when you look at a scoring relay, first of all, what are we using? We're using 3 switches. We have a lock-in switch, a chime, and a carryover. Oh, and a drum. So we have 4 switches we're using. You'll find some other ones on there. The lowest denomination relay often drives a match unit, which is a stepper of some sort. It's either randomizing what the match number is going to be at the end. Sometimes it moves features around on the play field. So there are other switches on your scoring relay, and they're going to do things like match unit. I talked about rewarding a replay. So there's a whole circuit for determining replay scores and advancing the credit unit. There is a switch on usually the higher denomination scoring relays that will close when you've, let's say, scored 1,000 points. It's going to close that switch, which is then using the wipers that are on our score reels. We don't have any wipers on the score reels we're demonstrating with because we wanted to be able to see more, plus we're not using that in the demonstration.
Is that the same as a sweeper?
Yeah, sweeper or a wiper. And I'll point it out here. If you look at a game that has 4 score reels, a single player game, you'll notice that the lowest one has a wiper disc or a wiper on it. Let's say it's the 10. The 100 doesn't have a wiper, and then the 1,000 has a wiper and the 10,000 has a wiper. Why doesn't the 100 have a wiper? So, I say this in kind of a funny way. Your game doesn't care what number is showing in the hundreds unit. For the tens unit, it cares for match. It only cares at the very end of the game what number is showing, but it does it with the wiper. On the higher digits, it needs to know what number is showing for replay scores. For the 100, it just doesn't care. It needs to know if it's 0 or not for startup sequences, and we'll talk about that in a session tomorrow. And it cares if it's 9, because of how we do the carryover. But it doesn't care about anything else. So those wipers are there for replay scores and match. Let's see, some other things you'll find on a score relay. And let's see, ball index. So particularly on Bally and Williams games and less so on Gottlieb. I don't think Gottlieb ever did this. The way it knows that the ball is actually on the playfield is by turning on something called ball index. And on most games, it's the lowest denomination or maybe the lowest 2 denominations. Sometimes it's different ones. On your schematic for ball index, it'll show you which scoring relays will turn on ball index. But that's another switch you're going to find on your score relays. And then this example with ball count, this surprised me when Mark found this, and we included it in the deck. Mark, let's see, this was from Rocket 3.
So we don't understand that circuit as well as we want to, but the point is that it's, there are going to be games that are using score relay switches in creative and obscure ways, and don't just assume it's for driving score reels, right? There's going to be doing other things in your game, so you're going to kind of have to hunt and peck if you're suspecting something's wrong. Don't, they were very clever about coming up with creative ways of doing things with switches you didn't expect.
All right. Now, to show an example still in the scoring relay realm, but to have a longer lock-in period and to kind of bring the motor in, which is going to complicate things further but help you kind of understand things, we're going to build a 50-point relay. So let's see. What happens when you've got 50 points, I'll talk it through, then we'll look at the schematic. And Mark, are you going to build it while I'm talking?
I'm halfway there.
You're halfway built. Okay.
I want to test it. But
okay. So talking it through. You hit a switch on the playfield that scores 50 points. What happens? A relay turns on, usually in the cabinet of your game, but I've seen it elsewhere. A relay turns on, and it's got a lock-in circuit that's going to hold it on, waiting for the 50 points to get scored. A switch on that relay is going to turn the motor on, and switches on the motor in conjunction with switches on the 50-point relay are going to send pulses to the 10-point relay. It's going to send 5 pulses, and then the lock-in circuit is going to break, the 50-point relay turns off, and we're done. And the motor will stop turning. So, looking at that in a schematic form, what I was describing, we're going to close the switch on a 50-point target and turn on the 50-point relay, which is going to stay on, waiting for something on the motor. And this says score motor 5. And if we look at score motor 5, by the way, this chart over here is a timing chart for your motor. So 5 is telling me if I have a switch in 5, that switch is going to change state toward the end of the cycle of that motor. And I can see this is a motor that's going to turn 180 degrees. We've got different switches being activated all throughout. We have pulses down here in the impulse, and we're going to use those as well in this circuit. So this switch that starts closed is going to open way at the end of the cycle of the motor. All right. While that is happening, and I know we'll have an animation of this, I'm just going to kind of slow it down here. A switch on the 50-point relay is going to turn on the motor. The motor is going to stay on until index. So it's going to stay on until it gets all the way around back to, it's going to go to 180 degrees and then stop. And while the motor is turning, this switch is going to be closing. It's the impulse switch. It's going to get 5 pulses before we get to this point where the 50-point relay drops out. So the 10-point relay is going to get fired 5 times through this line. Now let's take a look at it here. And this is animated, so I can't slow it down.
You can't slow it down.
It's showing it to you. Now,
watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, I just caught my cord. Right.
So as this green cursor is sweeping across the screen, it's showing you as the motor turning very slowly and what circuits are activating and deactivating. And below that chart there, you can see the 10-point relay fires 5 times during this process. And below that, you can see that the 50-point relay stays active for a time that's slightly longer than it takes to let those 5 pulses through. And then at the very end, the 50-point relay lets go, and then the motor comes to a stop. And that's how, if you back up and go forward again.
Yeah, I was just gonna do that.
So our score reel starts at 0, and this is the first pulse, right? So because we have our 50-point relay on, right? And now we're coming up on the second pulse that's going to fire my 10-point relay, okay? And we'll work our way through the third and fourth and fifth pulses. So after this, so this is the 4th pulse. We're going to get 4 on the score reel. We're coming up on the 5th pulse, and then shortly after that, our 50-point relay is going to let go, right about here, okay? And then this is just to demonstrate. Now I've got the basic lock-in circuit working again, but now instead of firing a score reel, it's sending power into my score motor.
And let's, maybe you were going to say this, but I want to make sure people know. This is a score motor that runs slower than in your game. It's for demonstration. It was done on purpose. It's running nice and slow. And there is a switch in all those switches on your motor. There is one switch that doesn't need anything else to happen. It's the one that makes your motor go back to home from wherever it starts. It's going to end up and stop in the same place all the time.
So this is a great test if you're never sure if you have power in your game, if the fuse is any good. All motors have a home position switch, and if you're comfortable, you can actually give your motor a slight nudge, just enough to close that first switch. And now it's going to run until it finds the next home position. That's a quick and dirty way to test, do I have 24 or 50 volts or whatever.
And something I do like to teach people about score motors is you have all these switches on the score motor. There's one switch that works all by itself, and it's the one that returns the motor back to home. All those other switches only work in conjunction with something else in the game being activated. More than not, it's a relay. But you can turn that motor by hand like he just did, and nothing happens in your game. There isn't another switch in the game that's waiting for a switch on the motor to be closed. So you see that whole nest of switches there, they all are dependent, each one of them is dependent on something else. Or more likely something else is dependent on it. But there's only one switch there that actually does something all by itself, and it's return the motor back to home. So right now we've got, what?
So I've got this 50-point relay wired up just to demonstrate that it's working without biting off more than I can chew. So the next step is to leverage this 50-point relay and have it shut off at the very end of the process by the motor. And the other step is to now have the motor drive our 10-point relay, right? Sending 5 pulses to my 10-point relay. So the first step, I think, is to move this end of stroke switch that I used manually, put that on the motor, okay? So I'm just going to move this switch over to here. So if I've done this right, this relay should now stay active for 1 cycle through the motor sequence, and then the motor should tell it you're done. Let's see if that's working for me. Okay, so the motor cut the power, but this is typical of 50 points or extra ball, whatever. The motor is the guy that lets go of your relay, okay? And the final step, is that right? Final
Yeah,
step?
yeah.
Is to, we've had all along our buddy, the 10-point relay over here, right? Well, now, rather than using that target, I want to use the motor to send 5 pulses into my score reel, right? So I'm going to take this off of here, and I'm going to connect it to the switch that closes 5 times. And fingers crossed, I think it's good. Right?
Yay!
Right. It's always nerve-wracking. No, it works great. So at the end, I invite you all to come up and try this. I would not recommend moving any of the alligator clips, but by all means, you know, press the buttons, convince yourself that you understand what's going on. We'll probably hook that back up again.
Yeah, we'll probably change this so that we've got, you can do 10 points with the 10-point switch,
Let me put
or
that back.
through the 50-point relay.
Yeah.
The way your game is wired up that way as well.
So is that it? Was there?
That is the last part of the build. We have time now for questions. If there are more questions, or we got a question here? Okay.
Holding it, thanks. David, so let's just say on score reel, on the 1s or the 10s, how does it know that it's at, like, let's just say, for instance, the 5 or the 6? Like, you know, say it's just there on ball 1 and then going into ball 2. It just knows that it's there already, and so it knows to send the next pulses that'll change it over. Like, how does it know what number it's actually on?
So I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but let me see if I can get it. So first of all, for the lowest denomination digit, which I think is what we're kind of talking about, yeah, or are kind of throughout the game, until you're getting into the replay scores, the game, it doesn't matter what number is showing. Like the game operates exactly the same, irregardless of what number is showing. So, you know, if you have a wiper on the disk, so it actually has a circuit that will identify each digit, that's only used on the lowest denomination ones for match. At the very end of the game, it wants to know what number is showing on that score reel. All throughout the game, it does not care. I can't think of a game that.
No. So during scoring and during reset, really all it cares about is, am I at 0, am I at 9, or something else, right? So 0 is used, very important for reset. 9 is used to carry over, just right, and everything else just doesn't matter. Now, it does matter if you're talking about matching or high score replay levels, but there's an extra part of the wiper board that we have not shown here that uniquely identifies the 10 digits. But all the score reels are going to have those 3 switches, apart from the last one, which doesn't carry anywhere.
And we'll talk more in the session on startup tomorrow about the switches that identify that 0 is showing. So that's part of the startup sequence. Did that kind of get at what you're?
Yeah, I think I was just, yeah, that does explain some stuff. But I'm just, so there's something on there at the 9 that tells the next one when to go. But there's actually something on there.
Yeah, yeah. And I invite you to come up at the end and try it, and
Okay.
you'll see the switch open and close when it gets to 9.
I see.
And it's often the one that, often score reel hangs trying to climb that hill to 9 because it's trying to close one more switch. And if you're right there at the hairy edge where you need to clean the thing and it's got a little extra friction, sometimes 9 is more than it can do. Or maybe it takes 2 or 3 tries because there's one more switch that's trying to close it when it gets to 9.
That could happen with any number. It doesn't have to be 9. Because sometimes you only get like.
Can we get a microphone for
sorry.
Stan? Yeah.
Demystified.
So that it doesn't have to have. It doesn't only have to have or happen on a 9. It could happen on any number, correct?
What can happen?
The hanging up.
Oh, if it. All right. So we're talking about a score reel that isn't advancing reliably, just
Yeah.
even manually, outside of in a game,
Right.
right? So there's a lot of points of friction in score reels. Different manufacturers also had, and different eras, there's different ways you want to service that score reel to reduce that friction. In particular on Gottlieb's from the mid-60s on, they had a different score reel earlier, but from the mid-60s on, there's a way that they designed the closure of the 9 switch where there's a lot more friction, or the spring that drives the score reel has a lot more work to do. We said that you get a pulse and it pulls the plunger in. Well, the advancing of the score reel is just the spring that pulls it back out. And if your score reel has added friction in it because it hasn't been serviced in years, or the grease has dried up, or sometimes the spring just can't overcome the switches the same way it used to. You have to adjust these switches. The amount of effort the spring has to overcome to get to closing the 9 switch, without demonstrating the details, it's a lot of work to get that switch closed. And so it often is hanging up. You can see it hanging up, like the 8 is still showing and it can't quite get to 9. It has to do with the mechanics of mostly in Gottlieb score reels, getting that 9 switch closed. If we tried to get the camera in really tight, Mark, maybe we can show the 9 switch. I mean, what you've got is you've got an armature that's usually just moving sort of these 2 switches here, and to get to 9, it pushes really hard. So a switch that's already closed gets very closed as it reaches to close the 9 switch. And that really it requires more effort from that spring. And you just end up adjusting the switches, and you can always, I've always been able to overcome it. I think that's what you were getting at.
You're welcome to play with these immediately after, or there are more of these kind of things in the exhibit, in my exhibit in the second building.
Yeah, I did want to mention,
later today.
Mark is just a genius at building this stuff. I thought about what I'd want to build for a presentation like this, and when I started talking to Mark, he would show me something. He goes, "You mean like this? You mean like this?" And you had to build more after we started talking about this, but just check this stuff out. Go check out his exhibit. People that are online, look at where he's going to be with his exhibit, because he breaks out all the components of an electromechanical game, and you can see it. You can touch the buttons, make it activate, look closely at these switches, and see how things are supposed to work. And you've got some complicated stuff too with the whole games that you can play with all the components showing there. It's really great stuff.
Any other questions?
Just a comment with regard to the 9th position switch. Like you said, it has to overcome a lot of resistance, and the tension on those blades, for not just the 9th position blade, but the other 2, if it's pushing back too hard, even if you've got a well-lubricated or well-cleaned, and very little lubrication, folks. Yeah, it's the curse. But just the tension on the blades, a fine balance of, yes, I want it to push this far, and no, I don't want it to keep my cam, which raises that 9th position arm, to push it closed. I don't want it to push it back.
I should clarify. So the 9th position switch thing, that's usually the symptom, that it's harder to get into 9. That's not necessarily the cause. So you're absolutely right.
Are there more questions?
That was the first time I heard the word cam in here, and that's one of my questions, I guess, after your presentation.
Oh, okay.
A couple of them.
Okay.
With the sweeper.
Yeah, could that same motor that's being used to generate the 5-pulse train be adjusted to do like a 3-pulse or 10 pulses, or would I need a different mechanical setup for that?
you would need to, you can't change the cams on these motors. You can on Williams and Bally. But there are other techniques for getting more than 5 pulses, or fewer than 5 pulses.
Yeah, let me bring up that slide that had the diagram here. So there are a variety of different ways that games, let's say you needed to have a 30-point relay, right? You could do the exact same setup that we have with the 50-point relay, but have it dropping out instead of, let me find my cursor, okay. Instead of having it drop out here, as we documented, if it dropped out here, so you install a switch on the cam 3 instead of on cam 5, and that's your lock-in circuit, you're going to hit 3 pulses, and then you're going to drop out your relay. The motor's still going to finish the full cycle, but the impulse, you got picked up the first 3 impulses instead of all 5. That's one way of doing it. Games do it in a variety of different ways.
Bally games in particular will often have a cam with a 3 or a 4 or something for a given target. 3 is not a common scoring multiple across the thousands of games, but sometimes they would. This motor, the carousel motor, does not change the cams, but the horizontal motors, sometimes they do add an extra cam or 2 for a specific target feature or whatever.
If you really sort of want to study that, if you want to study this and you're familiar with schematics, take a look at the circuit for a quarter that can give you 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 games. I think they do 6 on some. It's a very complicated use of a variety of different motor switches. And in fact, I think in that situation, they actually use all 5 pulses, but counter those pulses against other motor switches that will be open if you're only supposed to get so many credits for that quarter. So it can be a complicated circuit where it's actually using the 5 pulses, but blocking a bunch of them.
I have an animated circuit on my website, if you're curious, that shows 1 score motor turn and 5 different award levels, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and how you would generate all different combinations from that.
So I think for time now, we have to stop the questions. I'm here for the rest of the weekend. Mark's in his booth most of the time. We'll be here tomorrow for another presentation. And thank you for your time.